Hello again, and welcome to the Master's Voice. I'm Celestial, and you are welcome to this channel. To old and new subscribers alike, you are very welcome. I do not have any announcements at this time. If you're new to the channel, please just check under one of my older videos for you to know where to follow. If you choose to follow by podcast or if you choose to stick with the videos. And that's about all I'm going to say. This is going to be very brief, just to cover a few things that the Lord keeps mentioning. It's not as if he expanded it, really. Just a few things that he keeps mentioning, but because of the insistence, because they keep coming back, especially the names, it's important for me to mention them. Even though I don't really have an expanded knowledge about these people, I don't think it's necessary for me to know these people in depth. It's just necessary for me to say that these names have come up. And just the same way one person's name came up in June, and then very shortly after that, this person has reappeared back in political life. This person has reappeared back in the press. In the same way, because these names are seemingly random, because they're people that I'm literally not thinking about them at all. And also at least one of them has been long out of the spotlight. But to have a name just come to you so clearly out of nowhere, like Steve Bannon's name. The Lord gave me Steve Bannon's name in June of 2025, on June the 21st, 2025, using him as a reference to show just as suddenly as he was fired in the first Trump administration, unceremoniously dismissed, the Lord actually launched off that prophecy of how suddenly you will fall out of favor, how suddenly a person will lose their job, how suddenly a person will get ousted from a so-called inner circle where they really thought, I'm in here. I'm part of the mechanism. I'm part of how things go. I'm part of the ebb and flow of daily life in this place. And then Steve Bannon all of a sudden just shockingly fell out of favor. He was fired. He wasn't just fired. He was investigated, more like railroaded. He went to jail. Because that is what happens in some of these inner circle places. You join the inner circle and they bring you in knowing that you have dirt, or you join the inner circle and they bring you in and then they get you to do dirt. And then when they kick you out, they expose the dirt, like the president is currently experiencing. They expose the dirt that they were previously willing to cover up. And that's what happens when you fall from favor, not only in the political space. It happens to people in the industries, for the movies, for the music, for sports. It happens because either they bring the people in and they make them do dirt and they record it, or they bring the people in knowing that they have dirt and they're willing to leverage that dirt at a time. So Steve Bannon's name has come up. Another man's name came up. The man's name is Rush Limbaugh. And I didn't know anything about that man, but he just came up because God was talking about how information is put into people's heads here in America. So it took research to find out not only that the man used to be a very popular Republican radio personality. I had some subscribers saying later that, I was a Rush baby, meaning that they grew up listening to their fathers and their mothers in morning traffic, taking them to school, listening to this man's show. And so this man apparently shaped an entire generation of Republicans, and he apparently had some very hard-line views that were so influential that they made it all the way up to the White House. So this is just a radio jockey, a radio guy. Can't exactly call him a DJ, but a radio talk show host. People used to have shows then, they have shows now. So the Lord gave me that man's name, and that man, I didn't know that man from anywhere. And so this other man, two men were given to me, and I don't know much about them, so I can only give a brief insight into whatever relevance they may be. But the first man that God talked to me about 2 days ago, I think it would be maybe on the 17th. It was the day of the 17th, a very difficult day for me. So after I made my video and I went to prepare for bed, this name just came out of nowhere, and the name is Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel. And I thought, I know that name. I think I know that man. And Rahm Emanuel used to work for Barack Obama, but in a very curious turn of events, he resigned. He resigned suddenly. He didn't even last the full term of the first presidency. He was there for about, I think, 20 months, which is all of the first year and most of the second year. I think he left in October. And it was a little bit of a shock in some quarters, but then again, not a little bit of a shock in other quarters. And in fact, when the president made the announcement, he said it was something like the least earth-shattering announcement of all, something like that. He said it's the least earth-shattering announcement of all. And when a person says that, what they mean is, if you have eyes and you have ears and you can read the room, nobody's going to be surprised by this. You would have seen it coming. So the Lord brought that man's name to me twice. I heard the name very clearly, and all I could think was, why does this name sound familiar? This man was is, even though he's not very active now, which if you just give me a moment, it will turn out to be very pertinent. He's not very, very active now as a Democrat. And what God put on my heart made that make sense, because his name used to be everywhere a while ago, back in the 00s, 2007, 2008. And then even in, I think, from 2012 all the way to 2019. But it hasn't been that active lately, and the Lord put on my heart why. So let me just explain that this name came to me twice, and I thought, what am I supposed to do with this name, Lord? Because it was very late when I finished that video. And what the Lord said to me is this: Rahm Emanuel knows everything that there is to know about Barack Obama. Everything there is, where the bodies are buried, where the secrets lie, what the truth is, he knows. He was close enough to see and hear, and what he knows will prove problematic for him in the days ahead. So that was what the Lord said to me on, I think, the 17th. Let's just say it's the 18th, because it had gone into November 18th by that time, heading towards bright morning, like maybe 5, 6 in the morning. So God says that this man, Rahm Emanuel, who, when he was at the White House, it was well known, if you go and look it up, and I had to look it up. That's why I'm saying it was well known. It was well known according to the internet, not well known according to me, because things about Barack Obama are not my business or my interest. But it was well known to the people who knew that this man, even though he was chosen, he was handpicked by President 44, Barack Obama, to be chief of staff. This is one of the most important jobs in an administration. Being chief of staff is very important, because this is the person that sits at the apex of every single other person that will be running about and moving about and doing anything in the White House. This is the person who will oversee everything from what the president's eating, what the president's doing. This person has full access to the president at all times. This is the guy, or this is the woman, if it's a female, that has the right to wake the president up at 4 a.m. Because when the president goes to bed at whatever time he goes to bed, this person is like a spinning, revolving helix in the White House that will still be checking the Situation Room, that will still be monitoring calls coming in from Russia. This kind of person doesn't really need a lot of sleep, or doesn't like to sleep, because this type of person doesn't like being woken up at 7 a.m. to hear, yeah, well, you went to sleep and then we got bombed by Iran. So well done. No, this person wants to know everything that's coming in, everything that's going on with the major players to do with America. It's a very, very important person. It might not be like a general. The person might not be a military general or a member of cabinet per se, like one of the ministers, defense secretary or something like that. But this person is crucial to how the White House flows, how the president's run flows. This person is critical for strategy. This person is critical for advice. Sometimes when the president has seen everybody else, this person is the person that can stay in the room, and then the president will say, well, you heard what they said. You heard what so-and-so said. You heard what the general said. You heard so-and-so that was calling in from Russia to tell us what the situation is like in Russia, what the general mood in China is. What do you think? This person is given almost a carte blanche by the president, because you might call him, biblically speaking, you might call him the officer upon whose arm the king leans. So the president obviously has to put a lot of thought into who he's going to pick before he does the picking. And for Obama, in his very, very critical first term as the nation's first black president, optics were extremely important as to how you pick your cabinet. And this man is Jewish. This man is a Jewish citizen. But I found something so curious about this man. This man renounced his Jewish citizenship when he was 18. He used to hold dual citizenship, being from Israel and being from America. And usually, most of them will hold it till death. Any one of them, you stick a mic in front of them, they will be Israel first, not America first. In fact, any person in Congress, House or Senate, that you stick a microphone in front of them, there's hardly any of them that will not say. In fact, Nancy Pelosi is on record as saying that even if the United States comes into some kind of terminal distress whereby America could not continue, one thing that Israel could count on is that America's support for Israel would not fail. And I'm thinking, if there is no country, how could you continue supporting the other country? This just goes to tell you that the information that the Israelis have on these people that run this country must be diabolical. They must have them dead to rights, with video, with tape, with recordings that would utterly put them under the jail for at least 100 years each. That is the only way that American citizens elected to office can be so unwaveringly fans and stands of another country that's not theirs. But this man, when he turned 18, it seemed that he picked America and America only. So that seems to be like his affiliation, that his birthright is not as important to him as his chosen homeland. So that's something that I found very important about this man. And another thing that I found interesting about him is that apparently he used to ride people's backs in the White House. Like, he was uncompromising in the standard that he wanted for Barack Obama's first term. In fact, when he resigned and he was speaking about the fact that he was wishing his successor well, I can't remember the name of the successor because I didn't watch that. I didn't know anything about that. When it happened, I was looking at a CNN article later before making this video. When he was giving a speech, it got to the point where he got emotional. And then he was saying, I know that I gave you guys a hard time. I know that I used to ride your backs a lot. Riding somebody's back literally means, biblically speaking, to plow furrows on the back, which means that you get a tractor and you lay a human being down on the ground and then you plow up their back with the tractor as if you are plowing up the ground to plant seed. It means that you want high yield, high expectation out of a person. And this is something that coaches do to their track stars. This is something that ballet coaches do to the prima ballerinas and all those who are the top in the company. When you know that there's potential there, you become very tough and uncompromising because you want to get it out. And so he was known to crack the whip a lot as the White House chief of staff. But what they say about this man is that he ran a very efficient, a very hardworking White House. He didn't want stumbles. He didn't want bumbles. He didn't want mistakes. He didn't want any bad press and optics for the president. And so he really took his job seriously. And he cried during his resignation speech because of, I guess, how much he loved the job and what he was doing. And so this then opens up questions to, was this man resigning of his free will? Because what he said, what they put on paper in front of the public was, oh, he's leaving to pursue other career opportunities in Chicago. And indeed, this man went on to be the mayor. I think he went to Chicago and he ran for mayor. And I think he got it twice or he got it 3 times. And he was sure better than that really strange looking woman, that goblinesque woman who came after him. That's the one I know. But this man, he left the White House suddenly, unexpectedly, and there were questions surrounding it, but they seemed to wrap up the questions and just say, oh no, he's got other political aspirations. And so he's going to Chicago, his hometown, Obama's hometown, to be the mayor. But then when you think about it, nobody transitions in a career downward. Nobody does that. And especially people on the Hill. This is Capitol Hill. This is Washington, D.C. Nobody does that. Nobody will go from chief of staff, which is basically having your fingers on the pulse of the nation, downward. When you dig a little deeper, it turns out that the working relationship between Barack Obama and Rahm Emanuel were never close. So you might think, okay, this might be differences between the men. Maybe these two men have outlooks. Maybe Obama was big-minded, open-minded enough to decide I need a firm and a steady hand on the reins. And sometimes when you're doing business, it's very pragmatic for you to understand that you don't have all the talents and all the skills to make your business a success. So what you're looking for is you're looking to hire a talent pool that will supply you what you need. And guess what? You don't necessarily need to be best friends with the people that work for you. This is one of the very stifling things about American work culture, is that they almost try to force you to be BFFs with the people in the office, which is absolute nonsense because nobody really knows who is who and what is what in the office. You don't know who's out to get you, who's out to stab you. You don't know who's running game behind your back, who's always anonymously reporting you to HR, taking screenshots of your desk when you leave to say, do you see she's never at her station? You don't know that. So there's this falsity that corporate likes to foster. We're one big family and all that. And it's not necessarily true. And that becomes double when you enter into a political environment like the White House. So it was said that the relationship between President Obama and Rahm Emanuel, his chief of staff, was functional. It was highly functional, but it was never warm. But then it was also said that the relationship between Rahm Emanuel and the president's wife was downright feral. They hated each other. And now God is coming. When did Obama leave office? 2015, 2016, I think, was when the election happened at the end of 2016. So this man has been gone for almost 10 years. And we have to look askance at God bringing up this man's name 10 years after. This is 10 years after the president left office, but it's at least 14 or 16 years since the man himself walked away from the White House to pursue first an extremely successful triple run in Chicago. I think his last stint as mayor of Chicago was 2019. And then Rahm Emanuel went to, of all unlikely places, Japan. And he was the American ambassador to Japan from, I think, 2021 to 2025. My years may not be precise because I really had to just absorb this information so I can deliver it in a fashion that can be absorbed, in a narrative that people will be able to lock to and understand, well, where is God going with this? So the president and Rahm Emanuel don't get along. But then the president's wife and Rahm Emanuel are like two cats fighting in an alley. And then someone throws tuna in the mix and then throws water in the mix on the two of them. It's just a horrible situation. There was so much high tension. And the way that happened was every time Rahm Emanuel would advance a direction for President Obama to take, Michelle Obama would insist that she wants to know what the directive is, and then she would counter what the directive is. If Rahm Emanuel said, President, with what's in front of us, left, right, and center, let's go left. Left is best. With what's in front of us, I think we should go center and then lean right. After we read the crowd, after we read what America's saying about that, Michelle Obama would always come in the mix and then she would say, it's left or nothing, honey. And that's a very difficult position for a man to be in, between the person who has his political aspirations at heart, genuinely at heart. Obama knew that. The whole White House knew that. He was very protective of the president, this man, Mr. Rahm Emanuel. And then how is a president to choose between someone he knows wishes him well, but they're already not warm to start with, but you know the guy can do his job. That's why you picked him, because you know he delivers. And then the person that you're sleeping with. How do you choose? How do you pick? And so Obama found himself in a situation where, for instance, I think one of the issues that they really clashed on was immigration. Rahm Emanuel felt that with the political climate in America, there was no use for Barack Obama to paint himself the great immigration savior. He felt that it was useless because at that time, the Republicans were really closing rank. They were not happy about the kind of Democrat presidency that was there. I can't go into depth in that because I have no knowledge of that stuff. I've already made it clear that if Obama's involved, I'm in the next room or maybe the next world. I'm not there. So I can't really tell you what was going on politically at that time. I was just living my life and thanking God for breath. But Michelle Obama felt, because of, I think, a second grader or a third grade child who came out and had a story about their parents being undocumented in something. And she really felt that it was a talking point that would make her husband look good. And so she wanted her husband to crusade on this thing and really campaign on this issue of immigration. But Rahm Emanuel, looking at the kind of opposition that was there, because most of this nation, including some liberals, rallied behind Mr. McCain. Mr. John McCain, who is now passed, who was the Republican candidate running against Obama, I think, the first time. So most of them were on his side. And so Rahm Emanuel really felt that this is not the time to rock the boat with the Reds. We should not do this. But he and Michelle Obama could not see eye to eye on this matter. And she kept telling her husband to get involved. And it got loud. And she's on record at sending very stern emails that some of the staffers would be unable to respond to, because she would basically be blasting them and calling them out in such a way that they would have to go and ask their colleagues, and it would get to Mr. Emanuel, like, what should we do? And I'm talking about all the way from the low level people, okay, all the way up to high level people. She's on record as blasting them in private. So this is something that the Strong Black Women didn't know, that this woman actually, if you basically bother to do anything but being a fan and buying her book, Becoming, which should say Becoming a Woman, if you bother to go and do some homework, you would actually find that she used to cause some high tensions when that couple was in office, because she didn't know how to talk to people. And she was very demanding, and she was known to have cussed out some people. And sometimes that is why the situation on the ground is not as the fans who only talk about, look at her style and look at her on the podcast. There's more to running a country than the bodycon dress that a man is wearing from time to time. I just thought I'd put that in there in case anybody cares to know about that. And so Rahm Emanuel left. Ostensibly, the world was told that this man, who is a very sharp man, you look at Mr. Emanuel's face and you know you're looking at brains, okay? He's multi-talented, meaning that he actually has the kind of brain that has developed well into the arts. This man won a fully paid arts scholarship to some top ballet school. But I guess somebody in his life told him, son, if you want to be taken seriously in this life, you're going to have to dance in your heart and then follow your political aspirations. So instead, he went to Sarah Lawrence, which is a very good school. So basically, this is someone who, with the help of whoever was influential in his life, mapped out a great career that when it came to being chosen as chief of the White House by the first Black president, powerful optics worldwide, the world was this man's oyster. And therefore, it made absolutely no sense when less than 2 years later, less than 24 full months later, he exited the White House without fanfare and basically walked away and never came back. Some people actually theorized that he was being punished by the White House. Some people thought, he's being exiled, he's being sent back to where he came from, whatever it is that people thought. And here we are 16 years later after he left, 10 years later, basically, because it's almost 2026 after he left. That's 14 years after he left, and 16. Oh, Lord, the math. 14 years after he left and nearly 10 after the president left the White House. Here is God coming at 5 o'clock in the morning to someone and just saying this one name that makes no sense. And then revealing that this man saw, heard, and came to know all the low down dirty secrets that are inside what once was the Obama White House. God says this man knows where the bodies are buried. Now let's collate that to something the Holy Spirit said to me in 2015. I never liked Barack Obama from the beginning. I've already shared that. I've been very candid about that. I said I had absolutely no reason why I did not like the man. And I couldn't express it. And it was so loud that the people in my life asked me, are you upset because you're not running for president? Because why are you such a hater? And then I would say, I'm not a hater. I think we should just calm down. I thought the hype was excessive. I thought the Newsweek covers with the halos were blasphemy. I just thought, how are we just jumping around for a person that we don't know what's up? And everybody just was jumping because apparently when things are black, we jump. We don't need to think. We don't need to vet. We don't need to pray. If it's black, we're jumping. Well, I'm a different kind of black. I'm a thinking black. My parents paid hard-earned money at school, and I don't like to disappoint them and let that money go to waste. I like to think about things. But sometimes you can think about things, and they can still be spiritually embedded in the dark. Things can be spiritually embedded in the dark, and you may not know what is going on. You may not have an idea, a forward idea of what the situation is. But I knew that I didn't like this man. And on we went. The first term ended, and to my chagrin, he won again. And I thought, what is happening in this world? By that time, there were a few more black people. There were definitely a few more liberals who were disillusioned because they didn't see any of the blazing promises of the first term come to pass. But you know how it is with politics in America. People are always willing to give their pony another shot because the alternative, voting for the other color of pony, is completely outside of their blood group. We live by haplo groups in America. Haplo groups is the grouping of your blood. Your A, your B, your AB, your O, O plus, O negative, whatever it is. But it seems that you cannot think your way into finding out who's best for you on the ticket and vote that way. No. If you're blue, you vote blue, even if blue is destroying your life, destroying your bank account, destroying your area, mining in your area, releasing chemicals, because blue always tends to support big companies. Both sides do that. So they could be putting silver, aluminum waste in the pond that supplies the drinking water to your town. You guys will still vote blue because that's what you do. That's what America is like. It's like a rictus of poison on both sides. So when this man won again, I was like, well, okay. And then in 2015, God had been talking to me about him and just telling me, I think in the second term, so this would be 2012, 2013, God would just say to me, this man is not a good man. And I would be like, God, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not a fan of this man. So I just thought me and God were just hating together. But then God never hates, because God actually can see what people do in the bedroom. And if God is looking at two black, massive gay homosexuals in the White House, then obviously God and I are not on the same tier. But I was in no shape to hear about gay men in the White House in 2015. No spiritual shape whatsoever, because my mind was so filled with lilies and flowers. Even though I had started to see Russia and China and things like that, but there were just certain things that the Lord didn't think was right to tell me. And so I can still remember one day when God said to me very harshly, very strongly, Barack Obama is a murderer. And I thought, a murderer? How did you go from a bad man, Lord, to a murderer? But God would just make these statements. God would say, when Barack Obama comes back into power, America will go through the most terrifying time that she has ever gone through. And when he would say it, because I'm so used to hearing his voice inside me, when he would say it, this sense of in the horror movies, when the person has run everywhere that they can run, and now that person who's walking, somehow he's walking, the killer is walking and you're running, but the killer always manages to keep up with you. And he finally corners you, and then the cello goes, oh, and there's nowhere else to run. And now it's fight or die, because you've exhausted all the flights, right? So that dread would come into me, this serious, heavy dread. And then the Lord would say to me, he is a murderer. And I have no idea. Who has this man murdered? Who has this man killed? Then it's like, it doesn't matter who he's murdered and who he's killed. Obviously, God was there, and God saw the murder, and God saw the killing. And because I had no idea at that time yet, 2013, 2012, that he would eventually be revealed as the man who is the beast of Revelation 13, I can now tell you that a lot of Barack Obama's murder is actually murder in potentia. Murder in potentia means that he's got everybody's death. Literally, this man has everybody's death sleeping inside him. And in the day that he will step and occupy and fulfill that role that God says he will fulfill, that he is the beast, and that he is a murderer, that is when we will see the full rapid onset of all the murder that he contains. Because now that I'm here in 2025, almost 2026, I can tell you with total openness that this man is going to decimate the population of the United States. You can go and look at the prophecy that is called the 44 honeycomb and bouquet, where I said that I saw that when Barack Obama came back into power after the other fulfilled prophecy that is still in that one, it's called the 44 honeycomb and bouquet, where I saw America woke up during a Joe Biden run that we never knew was going to be a Joe Biden run, because at the time I had that vision in April of 2020, we were fresh into lockdown and America was still deciding if she would even have the primaries. So God told me, oh, this is Joe Biden's. Joe Biden is going to win the primaries. And I was like, Lord, how can he win the primaries? We don't know if we're going to primary. So how can he win the primaries? And the Lord said, listen to me. Joe Biden is going to win the primaries. And when he comes to the White House, he's going to be bringing two people with him, Kamala Harris and Barack Obama. And in that prophecy, I said that God showed me visions of Barack Obama back on the campaign trail, sleeves rolled up, campaigning for Joe Biden, sometimes campaigning with Biden, but often campaigning alone. And we all know that even back then, Joe Biden was still a little decrepit, but he was not able to do his campaigns the way President Donald Trump was doing his campaigns. Trump was campaigning on his own, flying to sometimes 3-4 destinations a day. I don't know how he was doing it unless one of his clones was helping him. But Joe Biden wasn't up to it. And so in many places, Barack Obama went to stump. Stumping means carry on the political campaign. He went to stump for Joe Biden alone. And so that prophecy was fulfilled in the same year that I received it, 2020, because he went to Georgia and he went to quite a few other places and he was campaigning for Biden by himself. And I was saying, America, have you ever seen a retired president back on the campaign trail speaking for another one? And his draw, the popularity of him was so much that is what caused people to come out in their multitudes, because this nation loves Barack Obama. So in that prophecy, God was showing me that the phone lines in America were lighting up. And when you put the little old phone that we used to have here, the really old one that you put to your ear and then you go operator, and it's the first old handset, the little black one that looks like a trumpet, like a horn, like that. People were putting it there, and then I was just seeing the mouths talking whispers across America, and they were like, Obama and Joe, Obama and Joe, Obama and Joe back together. And God was saying, yeah, it's Obama and Joe, but really it's Joe coming in and Obama coming to run everything, because that's who he's bringing with him. He's bringing that woman with him. The man hadn't even won to nominate anybody, but God said he's coming, he's bringing that woman with him, and he's also bringing Barack Obama with him. So at the end of that prophecy, what God showed me was a clothesline that represents a timeline. And on that clothesline, I saw that all the factories of America had been run dead. So if it's clothing manufacturing, if it's car manufacturing, if it's whatever, America's factories, at least the factories that require human beings anyway, the smokestacks were silent. No more smoke was coming out of them to show that there's no more manufacturing going on in this nation. The smokestacks were dead. Manufacturing was dead. Production was dead in America. And that was one thing I saw. The atmosphere was very cold and very gray. The country felt very dead, very oppressed. And then on the timeline, I saw a dripping honeycomb. So the first part of the timeline, the part that was closer to me, I saw a very rich and big dripping honeycomb. And there was something else in the background. And the reason that the prophecy is called the 44 honeycomb and bouquet is because the thing in the background was very fuzzy like. And that is what happens in it's an effect that is part of photography. Bouquet is a Japanese word that is an effect that is part of photography. And what that means is you focus on something in the foreground so that it's very sharp and crispy in perspective. It has sharp lines, it's very clear. But then everything else in the background becomes fuzzy. And sometimes they do that with lights. They'll take a picture of a person, like a person is taking a snapshot from inside their car. So the person takes a snapshot and there's rain on the window, and then every raindrop is so clear. The windscreen is clear, the wheel is clear, the car radio is clear. Everything in the car, close in perspective, is very crisp and sharp. And then outside are other cars, but then they're very fuzzy, and there's all this astigmatism lights. There's strobe lighting, and the lights are all blurry and fuzzy because that stuff is not in perspective. So that effect of the fuzzy stuff at the back is called bokeh, and it is a deliberately done thing in photography. So what I was seeing was, I saw the timeline, I saw the dead gray factories of America, the dead gray skies, and just America in a muted way. And then the first thing that was closer to me was this dripping honeycomb. I mean, a big honeycomb just dripping with honey. But then further down was a sack, and the sack seemed ominous. I said in the prophecy, it's written on the blog, said that the sack gave me a bad feeling. I had a horrible feeling because of the size of the sack and just the way the sack was hanging. And I couldn't help feeling that sack that I couldn't see clearly was a dead body hanging on the same clothesline, the same timeline as the honeycomb. And what God gave me the perspective is that when Obama comes back to this very America that is so hard of hearing, just because the 7 of us on this channel are going to be, oh no, prophecy fulfilled. The entire black world out there, this is all the black countries around the world who have never heard me speak about who this man is. This is all of you that your family members do not believe you and think that you are paranoid and listening to a cult person on the internet. The rejoicing in America is going to be huge. And everybody who read the Constitution has this little question that they want to ask, but how can it be? Because the Constitution says, but here we are now. The Constitution says that you have First Amendment rights. You don't have them. The Constitution says thou shalt not snatcheth a being without a warrant. You're seeing the Constitution being torn up and made irrelevant. Not only are they snatching people, they are disappearing people. I will never stop saying, is anyone absorbing the fact that actual human beings, especially the women and children, it is being reported, are not being accounted for after these ICE raids? Where are the women and children going in a country that is known for trafficking women and children and eating them in satanic rituals around times like Halloween? Where are all these Latino moms and Latino kids? Where are they? Where are they? Why are they not accounted for in ICE custody? Why are 2/3 of the alligator Alcatraz people missing with no next step to, oh no, we tracked them down to a facility in Texas. Oh no, some of them were moved to another facility in New Mexico because it was crowded. Why is there a full stop, a blank question mark at the end of where these people went after being apprehended by masked vigilantes in the streets? Is it really sinking into us where we are? So then there should be no questions about the Constitution, because you're already being told by Steve Bannon that in 2028, you're going to see Trump standing there. That's what they say. That is not what God says. But he says in 2028, they're going to run. And somebody leaked footage. I saw it. I'm not sure if I downloaded it, but somebody did leak footage from inside a huge convention held at one of these private places. And in that place, they were talking about advancing some bill so that, if necessary, a president who is worthy can run a third time. So these are questions that we need to keep in our minds. And so before I continue, I just want to make one caveat, which is the announcement that I made in the beginning saying that this was just going to be a brief video. It is not going to be a brief video because the Lord has added many sections. So primarily, this prophecy was combining the names that the Lord gave me. He gave me 2 names, and he made some pretty straightforward declarations around them that I initially did not understand, and I had to do an amount of research to come to the fuller understanding. When I at least had researched a little bit to know who these men were that God was talking about, he then made more emphatic statements concerning the both of them. Very brief, very short, just to have an understanding. But then for the last few hours, I would say since 8 p.m. until now, it is 5 a.m. in the morning. For the last few hours, the Lord has been giving me information. The Lord has been giving me direction, and the Lord has given me a completely new prophecy, which you will find attached to the original title. The title of this message was originally going to be called Rahm Emanuel Knows Everything. Rahm Emanuel Knows Everything. But now it is being called Rahm Emanuel Knows Everything / The Time of the Sigil is here. The time of the sigil, that is Sigil. It means a particular emblem. It means a particular symbol is here. And the overall date that I'm putting on this prophecy is November 18th, because that was the time when we had crossed over from November 17th after my last prophecy about the fury of Esau. While I was preparing for bed is when the Lord began to speak to me about Mr. Rahm Emanuel. And so that date was November 18th. So I have a piece from November 18. I have a piece from November 19, which is the date I had a particular dream, and it's a very short dream, so it's included here. But then also the Lord has given me so many observances, and because this prophecy cannot proceed without mentioning Barack Obama, as the Lord has been speaking to me all these hours here in the evening, I've been going through my tablet looking at, with shock and surprise, how many prophecies and how many prophetic utterances I actually have about this man. I have made a handful, I would say more than a handful, perhaps 6 messages dedicated to him directly. And what I thought was that maybe I had 4 more. But there are so many prophecies, especially from the year 2020 when we were in lockdown, where the Lord would make an observance here and make an observance there. And as I've been going through my archives, I've noticed that I have not made these prophecies. And so I think I'm going to put a few of the pieces into this piece just to bolster what I was just talking about. We in America, in fact, it's not just about America. What is primary? What is important? The reason that Jesus Christ has drawn many nations here, there are many nations here, people of all different backgrounds gathered here. And the reason that the Spirit of the Lord is doing this is not just to show off the fact that once he's in the midst, anyone in any part of the world would be willing to recognize the voice of the Lord and come forward. But it's because God really knows that the church is not prepared. Yes, this is prophecy. That means that God must have his moment. I always insist that that be understood. Yah must have his moment to express his full voice. He must have his moment to express all the things that he knows that we do not know. He must have his moment to express all the things that we already know, and he is still allowed to have a perspective on it. When the Holy Spirit is speaking about something that you may have learned on a conspiracy blog, or you may have learned it just by observing how the wind of politics goes, and putting 2 and 2 together. You may have learned it by watching another thing that was talking about the Nephilim, and then you will want to say, this is not new news. I'm not going to tolerate anyone to disrespect Yah's speech like that. Regardless of what you know, what you think you know, what you already know, or what you're in the process of learning, this space is reserved for the Holy Spirit. This is the place where the Most High is going to express his knowledge, which is always higher. And if the Lord has allowed you to pick the fruit of knowledge somewhere else so that you already have the understanding of something, that still will never qualify you or even qualify myself to be disrespectful to him and say something like, oh, but this is old news. Old news to who? How old are you? How long have you been alive? Compared to this mind that for myself, Yah continues to confound me, as I've shared in the beginning of this prophecy. Because why on earth at 5 or 6 in the morning, when I finished a very emotionally draining prophecy, that prophecy, the wrath of Esau, it really took it out of me. Why is it that I'm preparing for bed and then the Lord will bring up a name of a person who has passed, at least from the highlight of his career as the White House chief of staff 14 years ago? Why would he bring up that man and start talking about that man? It's because God is greater than you. It's because God is greater than me. It's because God is the one who actually sees when the clock is ticking against people. And he is the one that will bring them into prominence ahead of time, so that when you see them coming back on the political landscape, like now, everybody can see Barack Obama waking up and inching forward into public life. And I do not know why the majority of Americans. Don't think with your gathered brain here of, oh yeah, here we know better. No. Whenever you're thinking of the outcomes that we in this nation are going to face, never forget to factor in the fact that the majority of the people, the majority of the hundreds of millions of people in this country do not know that I exist. They do not know what I'm talking about. And so you will always have to factor your outcome against the fact that those people out there, when certain things happen, when certain things begin to take place, they're literally going to bolt like wild horses out of the stable. They're going to become so emotional. They're going to become so loud. They're going to become so whiny. They're going to become so victim mentality. They're going to become so aggressive and violent. And part of the reason that Yah has assembled whoever will believe here is for the safety of the people who trust God, for the safety of the people who believe God, for the safety of you and your children, to prepare yourself against the fact that this phrase, all hell will break loose, is a very real thing that's going to happen in the United States. So this is not going to be as brief as I thought. So the prophecy that you have been listening to so far is called Rahm Emanuel Knows Everything / the time of the Sigil is here. November 18, 2025. And so I was talking about this fact that I think it's 2020. Yes, in 2020, April 2020, Yah gave me this dream where I saw America ground to a halt. I've already explained that. And what that means when you see the honeycomb close to you and you see what looks suspiciously like a dead body hanging in a sack is that God says that in the future, when Barack Obama comes back to power, America is initially going to have a golden age, and that is what the honeycomb represents. Life is going to be like it's sweet again, and people are going to say, oh, thank goodness, it's a relief from what we were experiencing before, what we were going through before. And that obviously, now that we're 5 years on, about to go into our 6th year since COVID lockdown, is referencing the fact that life is getting pretty bad right now, and it's going to continue getting bad. And that is a time-honored tactic in America. A lot of people don't understand that the government is playing games on them. But I found a piece in my prophecy where God was explaining this thing to me perfectly, just for my own knowledge, just for my own learning. And I was just reading the snippet and thinking, these are the games that he taught me that they play. And because he taught me these games long back, it really helps when I'm watching things happening in the forward face of the world, because I'm always thinking, what's going on while that is going on? What is really going on? What is really happening? What is the real mechanism at play? So what the Lord showed me in 2020 with that dream that came in April is that in the future, not just the part where that was fulfilled in that immediate time period where Barack Obama did come out to campaign for Biden, and that part of the prophecy was fulfilled. There was a whole second part that is not yet fulfilled, and that is speaking to a time where Barack Obama is going to come back to power, regardless of all the constitutionalists in the entire nation saying that it's not possible, saying that no, we have laws. I bet your faith in the laws of America are greatly shaken. Your faith is greatly shaken now, because you're seeing the things that I told you. I told you that no matter how robust the legal system of America is, that it would get dismissed, and it would get dismissed by the very government that you continue to trust to look after you and feed you and contend for you and protect you. I told you that the government will become very harsh, very repressive, very tyrannical, very wicked, and eventually start shedding citizen blood. And we are edging into that time. And that time is taking us into a very horrible time whereby by the time Obama comes back, he's going to be seen as a relief. He's going to be seen as the voice of reason. He's going to be seen as, oh, thank God, the crown prince has come back to save us. He's going to be seen as a welcome relief from a nation that would have appeared for a while to have lost its mind. Everything that you are seeing is part of a process the government does. They will create a crisis. They will create a crisis. They will manufacture a crisis. Like during COVID, they will manufacture a hard impact that shocks all of us to the psyche, that shocks all of us to the core, that makes the entire nation shaky. And when people are shaky and scared, they become extremely dependent on you. That seems to be the voice of reason. In their case, the government, but they also become extremely gullible. Scared people always want to go back to the status quo. They want to go back to when they weren't scared. And so when you seem to be the voice of reason and you seem to offer a solution, scared people will believe you. They will tout you as a savior. They will say, thank God for you, even if you've come from the bowels of Hades. And that is what happened. They manufactured their crisis. They brought it out. They said that it was life ending. It was an imminent crisis. It was going to wipe out the entire world. And then all of a sudden, they popped up within months, within in eternal time. It was like 2 seconds. And they popped up with something, and they claimed that they had tested it, and they claimed that it came from the angels themselves. And we know how that went. And they will do the same thing again. I already prophesied. I can't remember the prophecy now, but it has an elephant on it, and the nose of the elephant is caught by a crocodile, and the crocodile is trying to take it under the water to destroy it. I can't remember the name of that prophecy, but it's one of my earliest prophecies where the Lord gave me a timeline and told me they will capture the first group of elephants, the ones who rush and offer themselves, and then group 2 and group 3. Group 2 will stand afar off and watch, and then group 3 will distance themselves and go all the way up to the hill like, I will never, never, never. But they're going to bring that whole rigmarole back with force, with guns. They will change the laws. You will be a fugitive if you run from that. And so that was all in 2020. And when this man finally comes into power, it's going to seem like an initial golden age where people are so happy to see him. He's a voice of reason, but that's because he's coming in on the back of a staged crisis. Everything that you see happening now is being done for soon to return or will come back and return one day, Barack Obama. He's going to be the final act standing in the United States. He's going to be the final act having some kind of transferred power from all the regions of the world. America will be a hub, but the real America will be dead. The beast system will be standing in real America's place with a Barack Obama ruling at the head. And so that is what is coming. It's going to be an initial period of joy, an initial period of restoration, and an initial period of beauty. But I saw in the distance away from the honeycomb, I saw a dead body in a sack hanging like a cocoon. And that is what is waiting in the future. Mass elimination is waiting in the future. Mass killing is waiting in the future. That is what is coming. So what you are listening to me prophesy now about ICE and everything, we are on a timeline. In this timeline, the Nazi regime is coming first. That is what you're looking at. The prophecies, all my prophecies, that America will be like the Nazi regime. You see Americans everywhere screaming on the street, you Nazi, you Nazi. The prophecy is playing out around us as we speak. Nobody told Americans to call the way the government acting the Nazi Reich. Nobody told Americans to call the people that are snatching people up and harming them brown shirts. They're doing it naturally because now that they're in it, they recognize the lessons of history. They recognize how the lessons start. But what they don't know is that the lessons are going to pick up extremely dangerous speeds because the beast system is the Nazi system. They are one and the same. The government in Revelation 13 is the kind of government that's going to be everywhere, but nowhere worse than here, the seat of the beast. And so nobody has to inform the American population that they're acting like the Nazis. They're disappearing people like the Nazis. They're changing the laws every day like the Nazis. The president has just changed the law again today. Just by tampering with the Department of Education, he has eradicated a whole patch of degrees by saying that because they're not professional degrees or they will no longer be regarded as serious degrees, the funding for them has changed. And the importance of that, I'll deal with it later in another part of this prophecy. But the importance of that cannot be overstated because it's literally 2 days an example of the fulfillment from the prophecy I gave on the wrath of Esau, where I said that they will close the door and they will squeeze minorities out. Everybody knows who is the larger group of people who get associate's degrees. It's Black people, It's brown people, it's native people, it's the Spanish people, it's Indian people. They're the ones who get those degrees. It's the whole African community, Afro Caribbean community. That's the group of people who get these degrees, because these are degrees in language therapy. These are the social workers. These are the the RNs, the registered nurses across all tiers. And what this change in making loans to go to school available has done, if you simply look at it, if the communities that have less access to capital and they can't access loans from the bank anyway, and they depend on student loans to go and get the degrees that don't take as long as a full bachelor's does, if they get these degrees, right, and then they're able to move up to a master's in nursing and even a doctorate in nursing, but you cut them off at the grassroots level and you tell them no access to funding, you can go to school. They're not wiping out these degrees. They're wiping out the ability to have the government purse fund people to go and study. If you take away the government purse, right, because he's currently gutting the Department of Education and he's putting all the different pieces under labor, and I think he's teaching the work for Native Americans and everything like that is being put under the Ministry of the Interior and things like that, right? So the education department itself and everything that flows out of it is being depleted. And with that depletion goes away the funding, goes away the student loans. And who's accessing those loans? People who historically have not built up family wealth because of the systemic racism that they've been living under. And I told you that in addition to harming the Hispanic community, what did I just say a few days ago? I said that I saw that the government is going to start putting the squeeze on other communities, like squeezing the tube out, the toothpaste out of a tube systematically. If you cut off the funding, people can't go to school. And if people can't go to school, people are not going to be knocking on the doors for jobs. You can tell them that the school is still there, but to tell them to pull the money out of their pocket, they're not making it. They don't have it. And so you see how, without actually having to tell you, we're segregating the schools, we're segregating the schools, they're going to put poor white people out of schools. Almost all the black people, except those who come from some form of generational wealth, definitely all the immigrant families, right? All the immigrant families that have not been in America long enough, even if they're second generation children, they haven't been here long enough to build up the kind of wealth that can just cough up $30,000 or $25,000 for one child. And what if they have 3 children that are going to be going through the school pipeline back to back? If you take away the student loans and they're not able to access those things, the number of those able to access state resources drop, the number being employed in the workplace drops, all the immigrants will become less, also all the women will become less, and then the dream of Turning Point will start to come true. All the jobs that certain people feel that only they should hold, they will begin flooding in now to hold all those positions, which begs the question, what will the minority, forgive me, it's late, what will the minority section of the population do for work? What will they do for bills? Now do you understand practically how it happens? That the prophecy doesn't just come in the air where I saw that people couldn't pay bills, I saw that people were getting evicted. This is how it happens. When somebody cuts off your hand to access education, your entire life goes haywire. There are people in this world who cried because they had to leave school in the 9th grade because their parents just couldn't afford it anymore. And they had to go and start working on a farm. They had to go and learn a trade. They had to become a metal worker. They had to start driving a taxi to get by in their country because the money just wasn't there for school. And especially young girls are heavily impacted when you mess with funding for school. This is proven in study after study after study, the world over, especially in countries that have third world condition and things like that. And America's rapidly starting to fit that bill of a third world nation. So these things are being done deliberately And this just happened today. That prophecy went up November 17, and already I was getting tagged in the later part of the day and saying, oh, can you see this? Can you see this, Celestial? And when I looked, immediately just looking at one or two well-made videos and then going to the government websites to look at the government websites to see, is this true? It is true. Education is being broken down for parts. There's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in that ministry. When you break it up and saying, oh, well, we're not giving this money, have you asked yourself where all that money is going to? Because that money isn't grift. That money isn't waste. He said he was going after waste. When he redeems all the money that's in that ministry, where is it going to? Where is it going to? To a person that has made almost 100 or $1 billion just by suing different outlets. He sued YouTube and the case was settled a month ago. Did you know that? That the president sued YouTube and the case was settled a month ago for $24 million. Do you know that he had defamation lawsuits and everything against Twitter and against Facebook? And in the beginning of his presidency, when he was still acting normal, the judges put them on pause. They put injunctions. They threw out some of the cases. But now that he's actively in this phase, YouTube lost. The judge suddenly said that he had been defamed and YouTube shouldn't have banned him for the January 6th. And now he won 24 million there. He won 10 million against X. Notice how the money was low for his friend Elon Musk. And then for Mark Zuckerberg, I think he won 20 million or 21 million. Do you think that's small change? He also won 15 million from ABC. He won 15 million for ABC for saying they defamed him. Then he picked up a cool 16 million from Paramount. Do you think that this person is in power to care about your health care and to make sure that your dental and your social security is okay? What exactly will it take for people to see where exactly we're sitting and that it's not impossible, that what God is saying is actually right on the money in terms of where we are going? So Barack Obama being central to the future, and now God speaks of Rahm Emanuel. And then you will remember in 2022, there was a prophecy that's called Ready Player One. And Ready Player One is a prophecy that, even though I don't have the full details to it, the flow of the prophecy is very clear to me. And that is that the beast of Revelation 13, not the beast, the system, the beast, the person. Yeah, the beast, the system too, will tolerate no rivals. And God specifically said that nobody who knows the past of Barack Obama is going to be alive. So that was something that I clearly said in 2022, that nobody who knows his past, nobody who knows his history, nobody who knows his path to the top, right, is going to know his history. I think the man's mother died in mysterious circumstances in a boat somewhere. I am not sure. It could have been another pertinent female that died in a boat somewhere. And then there was the controversy of his origin. There was the controversy of, is he a real American? And then there was information that a true birth certificate was in existence. There was information that the birth certificate born in Hawaii, etc., was a fraud. And then the woman holding that, the woman who was central to that coming out, also died. But that's not the only person. And I will also look at that later on in the prophecy, because Yah was telling me, bring everything out, put it in the video, and then let it be before them. Because you have to think deeper about where you are. You cannot be in the belly of the beast and just thinking at the surface level. You cannot do that. I keep telling you that Satan doesn't owe you any mercy. As a Christian, there's nothing like that. The Bible doesn't say, sit and cry. The Bible never says anywhere that I've seen, won't he do it? The Bible tells us that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, meaning that if the Christian makes carnal choices or chooses carnal ways to deal with, for instance, deadly situations facing them, murderous situations facing them, and then you choose things like, oh, but what about this? And this doesn't make sense to me. Imagine you're on a countdown. you're on a timer. You have a limited window to respond to over 850 or 860 messages that have been succinctly and clearly put in front of you to tell you that will happen, this will happen, that will happen. And there will come a time where they are all congruent. They will all, at some point, these prophecies, they will all be running together. That means that Marburg, COVID-52, and other diseases like bubonic plague will be running at the same time as the scary prophecies where I said, when the plagues come, the government will round you up and put you in certain camps and keep you there and inject you with whatever you want. So there will be loss of the freedom of movement. Then I said lockdowns. That prophecy, they will go back. All of them, you will see all the horrible threads running at once. So that means what is required from us? It's a certain robustness. And it's also a certain level of thinking. That level of thinking is not going to come by feeling paralyzed, being afraid, or anything like that. So, concerning Mr. Rahm Emanuel, God says that he knows everything that there is to know about Barack Obama. So, it can't be that Mr. Emanuel came by his information by simply being in the White House for 2 years. Both of these men are Chicagoans, native to that area. That's the kind of place where if one young man has political aspirations and the other young man has political aspirations and they're almost kind of age mates, the two of them, then that means they're running in the same circles, or at least they kind of know the same people, or they bump into one another from time to time. Because God says that everything there is to know about Barack Obama, Rahm Emanuel knows it, everything there is, where the bodies are buried, where the secrets lie, what the truth is. When somebody says, somebody knows what the truth is, that means that what you know is a lie. Because your name is not Rahm Emanuel. If the Lord says, Rahm Emanuel knows what the truth is, the obvious inference here is that what everybody else knows is not what the truth is. Because everybody else, bar a few people like Mr. Emanuel, everybody else is not Mr. Emanuel. So everybody else does not know what the truth is. That means that trusted aides and staffers may not know what the truth is, but Mr. Emanuel knows what the truth is. What is some of the truth he knows? Yah says he knows where the bodies are buried. He knows what the bodies are buried. And now perhaps at this time I can at least skip down to one or two things. Everybody knows about this man that died in 2023. The chef. What I didn't know, because that seemed to have trended very briefly. And then like everything else in America, which is very troubling in this country, especially for someone like me, where the Lord will always tell me, my daughter, you have to have wisdom. My daughter, you have to be careful. It is not without thought and it is not without prayer that I will come to the internet and say these kinds of things. And the reason for that is operating in the prophetic means that you are speaking to things that are not immediately visible. And when you speak to things that are not immediately visible and you're confronted with an audience that has this mindset that prophecy must be proven by bringing them proof, it is the most backward thing I've ever seen in my life. Everybody knows that a prophecy is speaking to a time where the words come forward and the words point sometimes literally, oftentimes to empty air. And the words say, do you see that empty patch right there where nothing stands, where nothing is? I say to you, there will be a house there that is blue with a yellow roof with 6 people exactly living in each of its 6 rooms. And in the front, a garden of yellow flowers. Then people will come to you and say, prove it. I've never seen such a senseless, backward, uneducated response to prophecy before. And this one, I don't think it can be blamed on the pastors. It's coming from the hard-heartedness of the people. Because how do you tell God, who is speaking into a forward time, prove it? Prove it. Because right there, right now, there's a 6-story apartment complex. So it's not possible for there to be a house. Something is standing there. But then the Spirit of the Lord is saying, oh no, I see the space. The space is empty. Why? Because he knows an earthquake followed by a tsunami is coming there. He knows an earthquake followed by a tsunami is coming there in less than a year. And the devastation in that place will be so great that the entire land will be cleared and everybody will be so traumatized that the whole area will move away. And God knows that in that area, it takes exactly a year and a half for greedy developers to give the people time to grieve. And then they will excavate all the dead bodies, or they will just pour cement over everything. And then they will start building again. And what the Lord is saying is that I don't have to tell you about the tsunami. I don't have to tell you about the earthquake. I don't have to tell you about all the devastation. I'm simply telling you, end result, blue house, yellow roof, flowers in the front, 6 rooms, 6 people living in there. And then before you know it, the developers will come and say, you know what, due to the tragedy that was here, we're building the sunny pastures home for the elderly, but so as not to disturb the memory of the dead, we're not going to build a multi complex. We'll build something small. And then they build themselves a lovely senior center with only 6 rooms and a front room for check-in. And then 6 residents get moved in there. And then one person says, you know, my child passed away and she loved daffodils, and then puts a little daffodil patch in the front. And then all of a sudden, every summer, you see yellow flowers, and then they put a yellow roof. They paint the roof yellow 2 months later to match the flowers. And then everything that God says is standing there. And then the people who talk look like a fool. That is what always happens. God is pointing forward. And another thing is, there's always traces. Everything has a trace. This one, I'm not speaking in kooky language. Everything on this earth has a trace. Everything on this earth has a presence. The problem with us is that in this country, we rely so much on talking heads. We rely so much on the media. We rely so much on information from people that we collectively, well, minus me, people that we collectively deem as experts who have the right to tell us, this is the thing, that is the thing, trust us. We went to school for it. We've assessed it. This is the thing. And then we take it, and we take it on good faith. If that were not the case, then how does an uneducated Muppet dropout like Bill Gates have access to these life-altering medications? How is this man admitted into multi-countries around the world? How has this man managed to style himself as a human rights expert, as someone who is an expert on population? This is a person who couldn't finish college. Everybody says, okay, he dropped out of college to be a genius. No, he just dropped out of college to steal his friends' designs and to make a ton of money. And in a country like this that is so amoral, nobody finds any problem with it. They'll just say, well, you know, he found a way to make the American dream work. But the American dream is largely about stabbing the weaker entity in the throat. He completely defrauded and stole from Mr. Jobs. It's just that Mr. Jobs is the actual talented one. So he was able to spring back, and he totally engineered something that was absolutely different from the thief. How does this uneducated Muppet, who has more children than the people do in the village, get to walk around this world recommending what to put into African people's arms, Pakistani people's arms, Black people's arms, all the third world countries? He's there. If we do a really good job with vaccines, and if we do a really good job on the birth weight, who is we when this man doesn't even have a college degree? He doesn't even have the associate's degree that they're trying to attack and ruin people's livelihoods. How did this man get into such a vaunted position of power? Because once upon a time, when people did not know his dirt, because Americans love and worship money, they worshipped this man as a successful person. Don't sit here and pretend like you always hated Bill Gates. That slimy rat. He was loved in this country. He was seen as a tech bro, an entrepreneur, a maverick, and he was shelling money out because that is what wicked people in America do. They use money to interface with the greedy brains of the people, because in America, even if you're going to be wicked for some reason, it's always nice when you have the buy-in of the people. So when he was popping up in Forbes and popping up in Psychos Weekly, everyone was like, wow, he's a philanthropist and everything. And then it turns out he's just another white eugenicist like all the rest of them. How does this man have more children than a pack rat, okay, in Vermont, and then doesn't think that anyone else should be able to breed, is always attacking minorities' wombs in the country and outside the country, has bought up all the agricultural farmland? How do these people rise to prominence? Because there's an entire machine presenting them in one way to the public and then interfacing at the back. But if you know Jesus, this thing has a resonance. It leaves a trail. If you're with the Lord, you will feel something in your belly. You will feel something. You will sense that something's off. And they make mistakes. They make mistakes because the problem with the long con is that it's a long con. Nobody can lie consistently all the time. This is the downfall of lying. Truth will always work within the same parameters. You look at my videos, sometimes as soon as I start telling, I'm like that grandpa that nobody likes. As soon as I start explaining a prophecy, everyone's like, yep, that's the one where the frog ate the man and then became a princess. I remember that one. That's the 20, because you've heard it a million times, because it's the same story. It's the same prophecy. It never changes. God only adds layers. But if you peel the layer back, it's the same prophecy from 2019, 2020. So this man in his life has left traces. And Yah is saying that Rahm Emanuel knows the traces. But that is not all this man knew. Because you cannot tell me that there's a massive White House awkwardness with the president and a massive obvious clash with She-Man in the house, and then just say that this man threw away his career and went off to be a mayor. That's a demotion. Saying that a man knows where the bodies are buried is not just politispeak. It is not just political speech whereby, oh no, we know where his mistakes are and everything, especially when it comes to politics in America. When they say that people know where the bodies are buried, it's literal bodies. It's the call girl that you murdered. It's the Chappaquiddick of it all. It's the gay escort that you got too rough with. And then he died. And then you had to call the fixer. That is what it means when it says, you know where a man's bodies are buried. Yah is very deliberate with the speech. So one of the things that happened was that a longtime chef, he didn't belong to the Obamas. His name was, I think it was Tafari Campbell. This man died in an incredibly shallow pool of water. They said that he had a terrible paddleboard accident, that he hit his head and he drowned. But the water that he drowned in was incredibly shallow. And I think this man had a little bit of a military background and he could swim. And the story was really not believable. This man started off in the White House before the Obamas came in. He used to serve under Bush Jr., George Bush Jr., and then they came in and they really enjoyed his talent, his skill, his flair. And so he was the head chef in the kitchen for the whole 8 years of the Obama administration. And then when they left, they asked him to go with them and he graciously agreed to go with them. And he was working for them until the time of his death in July 2023. But after his death, people close to him said that the man had been working on a book. And it wasn't just any kind of book. It wasn't a book of my top recipes as a famous celebrity White House chef or my career as a man next to the throne. They said that he was writing a tell-all book. And the story concerning how the man died changed multiple times. First, it says that the Obamas were there when he died. And then almost as soon as that information came out, it was quickly changed to no, the Obamas were nowhere near the property when he died. No, they were far away. They were skiing in the Alps. Something else came out. And then another thing you should know is because there is a mechanism working, you cannot depend on the talking heads, the news, and the experts to give you the accurate story, because the Associated Press is nothing but a paid dog. All of them, all the mainstream media. For instance, take this thing that I'm talking about, right? This graphic and devastating change that is coming to the Board of Education, the Ministry of Education, that is going to have horrific repercussions in people's lives. I could hardly find a story on this thing to save my life. I like to verify things before I talk about them here. You can't find it on Fox. You can't find it on MSNBC. You can't find it in any of the big places. What you do when you're looking for news, you go to Google, you type in an intelligent prompt, And then if you're looking for news, you switch to news. You cannot find any of the so-called big guys carrying this. You know who's talking about this? Yahoo News, for goodness sake. Yahoo News is the top result that came up when I was looking for this thing. And then a few other personal newspapers. And then obviously the people, the audience that this is targeted against are dejected on TikTok. They're offended. They're like, what do you mean? We perform all the essential services. The surgeons are up in arms. What will we do without our scrub nurses? What will we do without the nurses on the ward? We depend on these women. They're like our eyes and ears. We need them. What are you declassifying their qualifications for? You're going to cause them to drop out. You're going to cause a huge gap in the market. But he doesn't care. Because if you're even thinking about this further, when there's a drop in essential care services, all these people that surround the so-called professionals, like those who are doing ophthalmology, those who are doing surgery, all the medical professions and everything like that, when there's a drop in that, there's going to be great harm in the healthcare sector. Because even if they're waiting for all the white geniuses to come in and take the spots, they still need to train. There's always a training gap when you get rid of your skilled people, or when you cripple your skilled people. There is always a training gap. And during that training gap period, people get hurt. And the primary people who get hurt are the infants and the old people, and the women who are already in endangered classes, like minority women. Every time, that's where deaths are going to peak. And they don't care. They do not care. So let's go back to first the death of this man. He drowned, and under extremely questionable circumstances. So this is now one ping. A second ping is this man who used to be a very vocal opponent of the former president, and his name was Andrew Breitbart. And I don't know much about Mr. Breitbart's beliefs or politics. I don't even know if that man was a Republican or a Democrat. So that's on me. I didn't take the time to look that up. The only thing that I looked up about Mr. Breitbart is because when Mr. Breitbart died, I found that scary. I found it very scary. And I remember he made some announcement, which I didn't remember it now. And wouldn't you know, almost every copy of what that man said is gone. I just remember him saying that he had explosive proof that was going to cripple Obama. He said he had explosive proof of something that was going to blow him out of the water. I don't exactly know what the accusation was in particular. I remember that he was teasing it, almost like a kind of press conference to a bunch of people. And the mood in the room was very high. This is back in 2012, mind you. So I don't know where that footage is, but I remember seeing that thing. And what I thought was, this man is not bright. That's what I thought, because I thought in this country, they kill people for less. And America does kill people. America kills people for nothing at all. And as we're getting closer to the end, the country doesn't even care about covering up the murders. They won't even do a cleanup operation or try to make it look like a burglary or steal what's in the safe. They won't. They make it look like a hit, and they just walk away. The way that they killed that woman in Australia, the woman related to the Epstein files, Virginia Giuffre, they killed that woman and they left the woman laying in her kitchen for her child to find. That's as callous as you can get. We're dealing with practiced, seasoned murderers that just pop up in the house of a blue and even have the temerity to eat the sandwich in the fridge and sit in the dark. And when you come home, then they say you came home later than usual, and they're acting like they're your ex because they know they're about to kill you. Sometimes they'll kill you messy. Sometimes they'll kill you neat. Sometimes they will leave no trace. But we're at the point where the Reich doesn't have to hide itself. This is something that's so long running in this country. And so you have to understand where you live, and you have to adapt your thinking. If you're an adult that goes to fact-checked information on Snopes, what is your problem? How hard is it for you to do the homework and realize that the Snopes guy is on the payroll? That he was exposed years ago when he kept popping up on Facebook. This allegation was found to be false. And I thought to myself, so wait a minute. Once it has government in it, it's not true. Every allegation concerning this filthy government, and I think it was a blue government back then, every allegation against the government in 2020, in 2010, in 2013 is just false all the time. The Snopes man is a paid guy. Nobody checks him anymore. But back then, it was like he was the ultimate debunker. Turns out to be some weird guy probably sitting in his basement on payroll. There are people who will pop up as eyewitnesses, organic, and say, I saw this. And then sure enough, you know the first thing that happens in America? Because Yah did say to just speak. You know what happens in America? I'll tell you. It happened with this current president in his first term. You have let this president get away with things that you try to railroad Bill Clinton for. Bill Clinton just had 1 or 2 semen stains on a dress and lied and said that he didn't know how those emissions got on a female intern. He said he had no clue. He didn't know the woman. This man faced impeachment. Another man early on admitted that, yes, I do grab women by the genitals. He was nailed to the wall in a suit by an admitted prostitute escort, Stormy Daniels. She won that case. I hope you remember that. All the sordid details were splashed everywhere. The so-called Christian president. And America just flowed along with it. He has shown no remorse whatsoever. He has never faced any kind of impediment, even in the smallest, to his political life. And yet the people in this country believe that they will die and stand before God and get a well done and come on in because your values aligned completely with what is in the Bible. We'll sit and say, well, the standards aren't even double. They're triple, quintuple, octa, whatever. They're heinous. And people remain oblivious to the fact that that sin will stick to them. A man in his first term carrying prostitute accusations, and now in his second terms carrying little girl and homo erectus, man-to-man coitus accusations, and still no impeachment for him in sight. No abandoning of him in sight. In America, there can be an eyewitness to a thing. There can be a real thing, like a Stormy Daniels. What will happen is that when the accuser comes forward, the political machine rolls into effect. He's got criminal convictions. He was convicted of parking his car 3 times on a mountain, and the 3 times the car rolled down and it hit an old lady at the bottom of the hill. There was 1 culpable homicide against him. The second time the car rolled down, it hit a 15-year-old boy. He's a mass murderer. This is how information is made null and void in the United States. The lawyers are trained to distract. The courts are trained to look the other way when it's people of power. The attorney generals are trained to bring the lowest charge that will carry the least time so that a triple human trafficking rapist can come out with an ankle monitor and go back to his mansion or go back to his Trump Tower with no ankle monitor, lose shocking cases, get convicted as a felon, and then run for president, only to now be facing the heat as a knowing consort to a sex trafficker. A top partaker in the sex trafficking. And yet this person will get on a jet and go and sit in front of the Korean president who we don't know what he's done. This person will shout at a West African president or shout at Nigeria and say your debt is too high. But this is the rap sheet following him. And the American people will still say, yes, that's my president, voted for him 2 times. And you know what? I still want to give him a shot. They will bring out ways to discredit people who talk. And when they can't discredit you enough, then you tend to go missing. But here's a very short pathway to thinking. When the question on the table is rape, when the person is a sex worker, right? Let me use not even sex worker, because I don't have anything to do with that language and that verbiage. The word is prostitute. So when the allegation against a man is multiple counts of rape, forced sexual contact, and then you have Jane Doe, and she's underage, so nobody can use her testimony and nobody can reveal her face. And then the other witness is a prostitute, right? What we're looking for is corroborating evidence. We're looking in these two women, the unnamed one and the prostitute. We're looking for familiarity in their stories. That's what we're looking for. When you now start coming like, oh, she has 2 kids, the prostitute has 2 kids, and her kids were taken by CPS. She's a terrible mother. Child Protective Services took her children. That's irrelevant. And a good lawyer will tell you that. That's irrelevant. When rape is on the table, you're not going to destroy the testimony of my client by bringing up the fact that she's a terrible mother. You know why? Because we're not discussing mothering in this case. Nobody's asking if she babysat the defendant. Did she babysit the president well enough for him to feel cared for as one of her offspring? It's absolutely irrelevant. You're not going to bring that nonsense to me and tell me, no, it points to cause. It points to nothing. It's an obvious attempt to obfuscate the issue on the table, which is, did this male adult forcibly put himself on the female adult? Yes or no? We are looking for holes in the story. We are looking for probable cause as to why he did it. We're looking for motive, and we're looking to the plausibility of the story. And does it match the other victim? Does this person, this rapist, this accused, this alleged rapist, have an MO? We are to stick to the points. But in America, what happens is that when an accuser stands up, it doesn't matter what movement it is. It happens is the same MO. And it's always the government behind it, paying people off because they have the deepest pockets. When the accusers stand up, they will sling mud. He had a drug conviction. He had a drug charge. He had a this, that, and that, until eventually, because the population doesn't think. The population is milked, breast milked on sensationalism. So when they bring these irrelevant, throw enough mud, then the population's like, yeah, I don't think she's truthful. Why? Because the population is largely uneducated. This jury of peers business is an absolute, total nonsense to take ignorant people off the street and tell them that they can follow the merits of the case and reach the same conclusion as somebody who is educated in how to keep their eye on the ball and come to a consideration, a reasonable consideration of what's true in this situation. It's absolute nonsense. It's one of the biggest flakeries of our time that happens here. Because if you can get people, look at what happened in the Diddy case. Years before Diddy was exposed, a man who was one of the people that he would hire to come in and abuse Cassie was caught. I don't know how the man was picked up. The man looked kind of crazy. The man looked kind of drunk. He was in police custody and they were asking him about something else. And as he was answering, he was led, as he was giving his narrative to the cops, he was led. I don't know who this man's name is, but I can tell you one thing. He's dead. At least 5 people died before Diddy ever got to step into a courtroom. At least 5 people, crucial to knowing everything about where his bones were buried, kicked the bucket before his trial kicked off. But then that's America for you. And if you think he put the hit on them, no, he did not. The government did, because this man had an entire stash of information that would have incriminated some of the biggest non-Black people, Jewish, in this country. He didn't have anything to do with the people dying. It was being taken care of. Loose ends are always taken care of because the beast tolerates no rival, no talkers, no loose ends, no nothing. No one who was near the seat of power to know how it went down is usually gifted with a long life. This man who was in lockup, being asked about the police, maybe on some totally other charge, in telling his story, he mentioned, hey, you guys, do you know Diddy? Because he's trying to build a narrative to show that I'm not actually this crazy, wandering, homeless type of guy that you guys are talking to me about. I know powerful people. This man is sitting in what looks like a hospital crazy person psych ward nightgown, but it's officers talking to him. The footage, it might be there, it might not be there. And he starts to tell them, do you know Sean? Do you know Sean? Who calls Diddy Sean? Nobody except his mother and people in the inner circle. Everybody calls him by his constantly changing aliases that he's famous for. But this man is saying, do you know Sean? And the officer is thinking, who's Sean? He's like, who's Sean? And he says, Diddy, Puff Daddy. He goes and gets a name that he knows the officer can resonate with. He then begins to give the whole story about how he was regularly brought to the house to sleep with this young woman for money. And that Diddy would sit there, please himself, watch, and sometimes do incredibly business calls, incredible, powerful business deals that this man said he was privy to because he was right in the room, maybe just half a foot away, because they were live entertainment for that weirdo. Nobody in America believed that man. Everybody clowned him exactly the way they did to me when I was talking about T.D. Jakes and saying, I see a blue house over there, and the blue house is called Bishop T.D. Jakes, and he's gay. You can't say that about a bishop. You're so jealous and filled with hatred. And then it turns out that the bishop is getting swallowed up. It only took 2 years, and the blue house was standing there, and then everyone was like, I always thought he was a little sweet. My discernment. Shut up. Because there's very few people in this country who can say that honestly. The people who can say that are the people in that area where he lived. For some reason, the people in that area refused to go to that church and hated it because they said that the people in that church were uppity and cruel and gave off a bad vibe. And I told you that is because everything has a resonance. Truth has a sound. When you're listening to it, you can tell that you are listening to the truth. When you are listening to constant, emphatic lies, they may flow resonant like truth, but always, because Yah is supreme, those lies will strike a wrong note. Lies always strike a wrong note. That man was put to death the same way that this rapist that got off this year tried to swallow up the footage of how he had beat that woman. But when I was saying that that man had put that woman through horrible things, I was saying it in 2022. By who? Because God said the same things that Beyonce suffered, Cassie suffered it, and she suffered it from a man who's many years her senior, and that he's the one who got her out of that situation to redeem her and put her into a better life. You're trying to associate yourself with famous people. Why? Because in your heart, you like to be associated with trash. Trash makes you feel good. Trash people kind of lift you up. And so you just assume that Jesus sent me on the internet to drop names because I too like trash. Anybody who doesn't want to drop the trash persona and follow Jesus Christ, that's not my business. Unless he says minister to this one, then for me, everybody is redeemable until God says they're not. But the problem is that truth is hated in America because America belongs to Satan. And the people in her have the spirit of the devil in them unless they are forcibly pulled away to the truth of Jesus Christ. So, of course, when this man drowned in knee-deep or thigh-deep water, a man insisted by his family to be a self-possessed man with some form of military training in him from his youth and a strong swimmer. When he dies in paddling water, then America will say it's an unfortunate accident. Why? Because all the news is reporting that. But in the midst of all that reporting, where is the critical thinking? It's not conspiratorial. It's not conspiratorial to think. You are not forced to receive the bombardment of common beliefs. Nobody said that anyone had to receive something simply because all the press is reporting it. It's not written anywhere in the Bible like that. I've not seen it. And so I know that I'm not compelled to believe a lie just because the lie is popular, the lie is trending, and the lie is what the news says. What does what the news say have to do with me that has a God that I can pray to and ask, or who will reveal things in his own time? Not only did this man drown, another man who was not like Andrew Breitbart came forward. His name is Larry His name is Larry St. Clair. He wrote a book, Barack Obama and Larry St. Clair, Cocaine, Sex, Lies, and Murder. Do you want to know what the very next entry about this man on Google is? So that you can know that God is always revealing the truth here? Immediately under the title of this man's book on Amazon is this title on Google: Obama accuser has long rap sheet. You click the article, it then goes in to say he was arrested for this. He was known for making outlandish accusations against a sitting president, because this man says that he knew him as far back as 1999 and that they had an intimate relationship. This man has since passed away. Apparently, he died last year in December of 2024. And then the article carrying his death says, however, the president remains alive and well, as if it's a competition for when people die. This man remained consistent in his claims ever since he came out. I don't know when exactly he came out, because the footage that I saw looked old, and the things that he was saying, it's just, you wonder, how is the man still allowed to walk around? But then another aspect of how people are still allowed to walk around in this country is that simply they will leave you in the hands of the American public, because, as I said, the American public hates truth. And so sometimes when you expose people, especially people that are known for doing the most diabolical things, if you come out and you confess that they took me to a party and there was a child and we cut the child in four, if you say that in 2004, you will get dismissed. It will be very easy for the person that you're accusing to bring defamation lawsuit against you and win millions off you. And the irony is that everything the person says as they're paying you that millions is true. They were taken to a party. There was a baby. The baby was cut. The baby was consumed in front of them, because these people are very bold, because they know that when you step outside, nobody will believe you. And then on top of that, if you get loud, they will send someone to pick you up. I'm speaking to you, America, and I have to ask you this. You're fighting right now for Epstein files. The files have to come out. The files have to come out. Why is it that you're not aware that you don't have the stomach for what exactly is in those files? Do you actually think that the files that man possessed are coming out to say, oh no, we'll meet together and we'll get a little 17-year-old? Is that what you think is in those files? Those files that probably contain popes doing things with dogs. Why is it that you want to carry on about things that you don't have the stomach for? Things that once you see them, your face will get like my face here. My face has changed in the 6 years that I've been here. My gaze has changed. My nature has changed, because I said there's no way that God can put you inside a swamp of a toilet that calls itself a country and then put you what you thought was the ground floor and tell you, dig up all the caked feces in here. And then as you dig, you got to a place where all of a sudden the floor dropped, and then you found out that there was deeper basements. That's what I've been finding out for the entire time I've been here. I'm still finding it out, as my last video evidences. I'm still finding out how deep the toilet can go, what this country is capable of, this ever morphing this monster. And then you will carry on campaigning, release the files, and the files come out, and you see a 4-year-old being mounted by a dog. Then we'll come back here, oh, Celestial, it's diabolical, I'm forever changed. Yes. Because what did I say to you in the early years? I said that God said we will all be ruined by this country. Everyone will have the 1,000-yard stare before this thing is out. You want to knock on doors that have things behind them that you can't tolerate, because you think these people ruling you, the worst they can do. You will see them abuse someone. The person will die on camera, right? Live snuff film, because Mr. Epstein he had and has an impeccable library. He has an enviable library. You will see a dog on a person, and then people pile up on one person. You will see the person die on camera. As I told you back in 2020, 2021, that snuff films are made here and that they're in demand all over the world. Now, when we're talking about Obama, what do you think it is that Mr. Rahm, Emanuel, knows? Pile up on a person, the person will pass away on camera, and then there will still be a line of about 10 more people on that dead body. Are you ready? Are you ready? Or is it just, you're just talking? Because when I just used to prophesy the thing, I was called vulgar, sex crazed, and all kinds of things that I hope God will bury into the heart in vengeance of the people who said it. May he do it. May they eat the fruit of their words, the things that they would say to a person sanctified and set aside as myself. Those files, if those files ever actually hit the public, ever actually touch this internet, that in 2 taps, they can go out to Netherlands, they can go out to Guinea-Bissau, they can go out to Fiji, they can go all across China, all across Russia, all across populous nations and small nations. If those files ever touch the internet and people think that this so-called distraction of an email drop, where the president has fought revealing these files for 2 terms, and then all of a sudden pops up and says, all right, let the files be released. And the files are being released with a caveat. What was the caveat, America? The caveat is that certain names were redacted if it was seen that they have no pertinence to the emails. But I ask you, if an email between person A, person B, and person C is circulating with all 3 of them replying to the thread, even if they are talking about person D who's not part of the thread, how can you say that person D, who is of interest to person A, person B, and person C, is not a person of interest and should be redacted from the files? How is that possible? If I hop on an email thread with 3 friends and we're all discussing a vacation in Cabo, how can you say that Cabo is not of interest when Cabo is basically the heading of the email? Trip girls to Cabo? How can you say that let's redact every mention of Cabo because Cabo is irrelevant? This blonde witch sitting in the White House, Pam, whoever, who pictures exist of her when she was a mere girl, wrapped up in the president's arm. If you've got time, I've got time. It's all over Instagram. That's why I said, if you go and follow me on Instagram, I put the most interesting thing in my daily story. You look in her face, she barely looks 20 years old. She is wrapped, bundled like Santa's little present in the arms of the person that you now think she is objectively working for. You don't know that you are living in the age of repaying sexual favors. This person is head of the Department of Justice telling you, we're going to release the files. And then 5 minutes later, we looked at the files and they're not files. There are no files. This woman is on record as saying earlier this year, there's no files. There's nothing in the files. We said that when we got them, if there were files, we would release them. We're not releasing them now because there's nothing in there. And then all of a sudden, and the reporters are rightfully crucifying her because a liar is an abhorrent being, a curse on the face of the earth. They're crucifying her and they're saying, no, Miss Bondi, tell us. Because earlier this year, you claimed there was nothing to release. Now, all of a sudden, you claim that there was nothing to release and nothing to investigate. And now all of a sudden, you're telling us that you will now be pursuing cases. Pursuing cases against who? Then she was like, oh no, we looked again and we found things to prosecute. But this prosecution is coming because of tweets that are being made. DOJ needs to investigate Bill Clinton. The DOJ needs to investigate this and that. You're a walking joke. Everybody should just start cackling at the next UN meeting. Because it's impossible to take this place seriously. But when I was prophesying in 2022 that America will be worse than a banana republic, is this not a comedy movie show? A person in power fighting allegations and using the arms of the state to deflect attention away from himself. And then this is the nation that says, no, we might do those things, but we won't have any third term power. That's not what God says. So We have a chef that died mysteriously. We have, as I said, people that date back to his past, that grew up with him and know him. We have an accuser that was very consistent and very graphic. He left nothing out. He said they did drugs. He said they did all the things that God prescribed for Adam and Eve to do, and that he was a very consistent partner to this man. We have the man's own mouth consistently calling everybody's strong black woman Michael. Consistently, not just one, not twice, several times, in different situations, where no one was present when he was making the speech. The people he was addressing, their wives are not called Michael, and they are not called Michael. And in one occasion when he would say, my Michael and I, then it's clear the possessive pronoun, my, it's not relating to any of the other people. I can't say my something and then people say, oh no, generously, she was referring to what belongs to someone else. No. My means of me, my property, in my possession. And when I follow it with a name, then that is my person. I told you that the matrix will glitch. The problem is that the audience is trained to lie. America's like going to a magic trick where instead of the audience taking it as their job to try and catch the magician out, oh, I know it's a trick. He can't possibly be sawing a woman in half. So there has to be a sliding mirror when he opens the thing and then it looks like she's in half, but her whole body is in one half of the casket or something, or it's a trick. There's a sliding door. It's in his sleeve. Instead of the audience taking it upon themselves to do the critical thinking and catch the magician out, when the magician comes out and does a bad trick and fumbles, then the audience goes, that was awesome, and claps and says, what? I didn't see anything. A bunch of liars lying for liars. And then no repentance, no shame, no remorse. Do you know what it takes to go back in your past and clean the pathway? Do you know that the average person who's calling themselves a Christian has no idea of the paper trail behind them, has not sat and actually said, Holy Spirit, I'm going to take this time and allow you to search me out. Will just go in their bedroom after hearing me on one sermon, cry, and then think that the thing is done. The thing is not done. The palace is very dirty. The emotions that come with receiving real teaching, real preaching, where you can feel the Holy Spirit, emotions will be stirred. That doesn't mean that you've repented. Repentance is the work of owning your sin. It's not mistakes. It's not mistakes that will send you to hell. It is the willful, rebellious rejection of the way of God, the mind of God, the thinking pattern of God, to put on the thinking pattern of the world, which belongs to the devil, and to say, this is how I want to think. I want murderers and rapists to get off. I want to watch their trials and say, no, a good black man is being accused. That is hellfire worthy stuff. And nobody tells people that. They will argue all day and say, just for saying free Diddy, for commiserating with wickedness, your life is already forfeit under Romans chapter 132. But the majority of people never look there. Romans 132 is the ending of a chapter that lists a lot of sin and then says, and those who approve of them are deserving of the same death as them. So if they go into death with their sins unconfessed, it will be eternal death in hellfire. You that cheered them on just for cheerleading evil, the Bible says that you will get the same punishment as the evil. But all day long, people sit with these gadgets in their hands and they just type affirmation. All the people who are doing MAGA, if that's your child, you won't see that child standing next to you in heaven. It's an impossibility because the Bible tells us not to partake in another man's sin. So if this was you during the Obama years and you've not gone to dive in the pool of the blood and to start scrubbing it, Lord, the idolatry that was in me during those years, you're in trouble. It's 10 years since he left. You are in trouble as if it was still 2008. That's what these pastors standing and asking for your tithe money don't have the time to tell you. They will just have you sing the blood of Jesus and not tell you what the blood of Jesus is for, what the work of it is for, and that there is so much to do. Take every single day you have before Jesus comes back as the mercy of God. You have an accuser, you have a dead chef, you have the man's own mouth, both in his older age, making reference to a trance in the White House, as well as in his younger years. In his younger years, he wrote several letters. I'm just reading you now what tonight has brought out. Tonight has brought out all this information. I'm giving it to you, evidence style. Apparently in his younger years, in 1982 or something like that, when he was about 20, 21, he used to exchange written letters with a girlfriend, and then she made them available to a biographer, someone who was writing about him, but she kept out certain passages. But then someone else leaked the passages to the press, and it turns out that Obama was saying that very often in his mind, he claimed, he very often fantasized of being with men. Very often I've made love to men many times in my mind. Lord, forgive me that it's my mouth and my persona and my psyche that has to be here in the early morning going over such filthy ground. And it's well known, another piece of evidence, that in Chicago, there's this thing called the Bath House. It's kind of like a club for men, except that the central, I know they have them in Turkey. It's kind of like a place that's men's only, but then in Chicago, what they're saying is that it has this kind of gentleman's club. And young gay men go there to rub shoulders, if that's all they do, with older gay men. And it's like a members only kind of place. And young people go there sometimes if it's their first time and they're shy, then somebody who is more experienced will pick you up. I guess it's just a more kind of gym-like version of a gay bar or something like that. And it said that he used to frequent those places in his early life before the political part came up. And there's also this aspect that you cannot overlook, the fact that American politics requires a semblance of Christianity. You have to pretend to be saved. You must pretend convincingly before the people for a while, and then afterwards you can be let off the hook to live your private life as you want. You can be gay in the White House. You can be gay in the White House, but also swinging the other way. You can be having escapades on the side, but it's just assumed that you're not going to do anything too loud, okay, to bring attention to the presidency. But you have to pretend, at least for a season, to be Christian. None of these men are Christian. All of them are Freemasons. It's a time-honored tradition. Everybody who steps into the American presidency is a bought and sold 33-degree or higher Freemason. It's mandatory. The earlier presidents used to proudly wear their aprons. There's pictures of them if you look up them and just reverse engineer and just put their various names and then put Freemason apron. They proudly used to wear their aprons, sometimes even in their official photograph. But at some point, it became bad form for the Masons' garb to be seen. And then all of a sudden, it flew out the window, and then America assumed, oh no, the presidents aren't Masons anymore. And that's because the mindset of the generations changed. And the Masons began to take on not a positive bent, not a positive role in society. They became suspect, they became shadowy. But before, they used to be very upstanding members of society. And all high-ranking men were proud to publicly be associated and affiliated with the Masons. So it was no different in Obama's case. When he came into power, we all know that he was affiliated to that Trinity Church or some church. And then with just a few months, They had been going apparently for years because it has to be convincing. But then it is well known that this man is a Muslim. This man is not a Christian man. This man is a Muslim. He doesn't regard the God of heaven. He doesn't regard the God of this blog. And so then there was this very loud split between him and the pastor of that church, Jeremiah Wright. Because I guess when public attention came on that man, he saw that as an opportunity to platform himself and to crusade for certain things that he believed in. Like he said that America would have to pay for its sins against the black population and things like that. And when you're a new black president and you're the president of a nation where, you know, the majority demographic doesn't look like you and they've taken a chance on you and they've rallied behind you, they really believe in you, then you really can't have an important figure in your life saying such polarizing things. So the Obamas broke away from this church and that man in 2008. And then since then, he's just basically been in the wind. Recently, Barack Obama said that boys need gay men to be their mentors. His viewpoint in that very strange clip that went very viral was that boys need to learn empathy from gay men, which means then that all the straight fathers are failing to teach their sons how to have compassion, how to be good men, how to have a good heart that pleases the Lord, because apparently compassion can only be taught by men who break the Levitical law and lie down with men, as God says, is an abomination if you lie with a man as a woman. So in order to have a heart, and in order to really grow up to be a man who has softness in him, who is in touch with his inner side, a gay mentor is the only person that can teach you, because your father, your brother, your uncles, the church, the pastor, no one else is capable of putting those ideals in you. You just have to be gay, and then the gay guy will handle your inner core self. So he did say that with his bald face, and who can blame him? This man is at the home stretch. In case you didn't know, he's at the home stretch. Everything that's happening in America is preparing itself for this man to ascend to power one day and solve all the problems that will have us sobbing in this place. And so there's really no need to pretend, honestly, when you think about it. And then you have the 6'5" sir next to him. A very large man is next to Barack Obama with a temper and an undeniable entitlement complex. And because this person has been the butt of very, very harsh censure, harsh assessments, and cruel jokes, Michelle Obama is not somebody who's going to take her punches standing, laying down. This is a person who will not accept to be sidelined in the mantle of political power. And this is the reason that Rahm Emanuel literally had to walk out. So I have some prophecies for you, because now I have to move on. Some prophecies that I've done that you can look at is fall of a nation, sins of a nation, bitter griefs in the Lord's heart. That is one title. Fall of a nation, sins of a nation, bitter griefs in the Lord's heart. The next one is the 44 honeycomb and bouquet. The next prophecy is Ready Player One. The next prophecy is emergency powers. The next prophecy is the beast of Revelation 13. And the last one from 2021 that you can look at is pogroms in America. Just a moment, please. I just prepped a little piece of the pogroms prophecy so you can hear how from years ago, this would be 2021, so you can hear what the Lord was saying about what America will be like when Obama comes back. So this is right at the beginning of the video ministry. If it's September 2021, then I had only been on the internet making videos for 1 year. Okay. The Lord said that Christians in America will be driven into hiding to preserve their lives. Otherwise, they will lose their lives. America will flow with the blood of its citizens, who will become victims of the state. So if you have heard of other nations that have killed their citizens in officially sanctioned programs until the number of the dead reached the millions, and we now study those things as part of history, God said that this will happen here as well. So Father said that people will be rounded up and killed for no reason at all. And this is how it was in the dream. I've not actually seen anything like that, except, as I said, in studies of history. In this dream in America, you could die for anything. And when I say anything, I'm talking about the word any followed by the word thing. There did not have to be a cause for you to lose your life. In fact, all that was necessary for you to be killed was for an accusation to be brought against you. So all somebody had to do was simply say, Celestial did this, and you would basically find yourself in a fight for your life, or you would instantly become a fugitive, because if you sat there in your house and thought, no, I'm going to fight this in court, you would definitely be killed. The Lord said that people will be killed for no reason at all, and lives will be lost, exactly as the banner scripture that I just read, Revelation 13:7. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. The beast in this nation will fight against Christianity, and his sole agenda will be to exterminate any lip that names the name of Christ Jesus, and to a very great extent. He will be successful here, for the Lord says the persecution in the United States will be so powerful. And even globally, the end times church, the Lord said, will be like watching limbs hacked off a tree. And I have brought this message many times on this platform. So I had several dreams. And the first of them was that I dreamt of the man we know as Barack Obama. I saw that he was so powerful in America that you cannot conceive of the power that I'm speaking of. He was like the president of America. The Lord showed me the White House, and there was an image rising behind the White House like the sun. So I saw the White House, and it seemed as if the sun was rising behind it, but it was not the sun. It was the head of Obama as the sun rising to prominence over the White House, and he had a huge grin, and there was, So I saw the White House, and it seemed as if the sun was rising behind it, but it was not the sun. It was the head of Obama as the sun rising to prominence over the White House, and he had a huge grin, and there was, visible radiance coming from around his head. And I saw that the sun rose behind the White House to about the halfway point. So it was halfway risen, meaning that it had not yet fully risen. And this man had 4 types of power. I can't remember. When I woke up, I could not remember the 4 types of power, but he had 4 specific powers that made him an absolute ruler in the United States. In fact, he was the most powerful ruler that America had ever had. And with those 4 types of power, I saw him make 4 types of law that placed totalitarian rulership in himself. And life in America completely changed because of those 4 laws. So he vested all power of state, legislature, executive, the army, anything that you can think of in this nation that has power. He vested them all in himself. And he was an absolute ruler. He had the power to do absolutely anything. I saw this man had the power to call for people to come and work for him, and you could not refuse. You dare not refuse. Perhaps we might say this is like North Korea, where anything that the leader says is absolutely right and you completely acquiesce to it. But he called for people even from Christian sectors. He called them to the White House to work for him, and he told them what their role would be. And I saw that when he hired Christians and he brought them to the White House, along with many other types of people that he hired, he tried very hard with the Christians. So he tried very hard to win them over and to be compelling and engaging and charming. And some of these people were deceived and duped by this man. But when I saw him, all I saw sitting on his shoulders was the grinning head of death. So you know the way we depict death with the skeleton and the grin when all the flesh is removed. That is what he had. And all that he wanted became the law, and every word that he spoke was absolute. I saw in America that death orders went out across the country. And there was a special office where these things were typed out. It was called the Office of Citizens Arrest. So now we know that a citizen's arrest is where a member of society is being unruly, but perhaps there's no police officer nearby. And so the nearby citizens can jump on that person and restrain them while somebody else calls 911, and we wait for an officer to come, and then due process kicks in. That person is taken to the police station, they're booked, right there at the scene of the crime, they're supposed to be read their Miranda rights, and then you take them to the police station, and there's a process before the person finally stands before a judge, and the judge, along with the jury, will go through the process of ascertaining guilt or innocence. But in this new America, there was absolutely no due process. Death orders was how the country operated. And so I saw the office, and for strange reason, the women in this office were dressed very much 1950s, 1960s. They had very trendy short hair and these frocks, so they were wearing dresses. I didn't see any women in pants, and they had the beehive glasses, the cat's eye glasses, sorry, and they were typing furiously. I saw women chewing gum, and they were typing furiously, and this office operated day and night, so don't think that it was running by normal hours. There was no shortage of female volunteers working in these offices, typing up the death orders. And these death orders were for Americans who were found guilty of incredibly and unbelievably small, pointless, and unheard of new crimes. So if we think that the lexicon of criminal acts in the United States is already pretty hefty, there will come a time in America where crimes that you've never heard of, like sneezing during a train ride or staring someone in the eyes too long. I'm just conjecturing here. I do not know what these new crimes were, but the Lord made me know that they were small, pointless things that cannot be taken seriously as crimes. Yet, this is what was entered on the form. So they would put in the person's name, the person's address, the person's date of birth, all your basic information, and then in the section called crime, they would type in that thing that somebody had come and reported that you had done. So there was a very strong reporting system in the United States. Basically, people had turned into snitches. And the Lord gave me this prophecy maybe 2 months ago, and the name of the prophecy is called Telling. And in that prophecy, God showed me that America will become a hugely bought and sold nation where people, citizens, report on one another for incentives, and the government will greatly fuel this. So that thing that you hear in New York City now, at the bus stations and the train stations, if you see something, say something. That is conditioning you for the time that is coming. That is conditioning people to tell them that they have a right to stare at another person and say, I feel in my little heart that he looks suspicious, and I don't think that's his daughter, and I'm going to call the police and tell them that I think he's trafficking that girl. And then the police come and find that actually the man is taking his daughter to the park, but you've ruined their day. You've profiled them with absolutely no evidence except what your heart feels. Well, that culture that has already been greatly stirred up today in the United States became the ruling culture, and the government paid money for information. And so many of these death orders that were being typed up night and day were because of this system of what God called telling. I'm going to tell on you. Grown people were doing that. Accept that. People who were arrested under a death order were taken to a camp and killed. You can find a witness for this information in the prophecy that I recently did called Technology and Tracking in America, where I shared that the Lord showed me how men in black uniform will come directly to your door and tell you, so-and-so, you are found guilty of doing this. So that is just a brief look back at the fact that a long time ago, the Lord showed me that the final act in the United States is going to be Barack Obama. And if you have collaborated with what is basically going to be the downfall and destruction of this nation, you need to take that thing up to the Lord in prayer, because you have to repent of it. Don't think that basically saying, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, that does not suffice. I'm so sorry as an expression does not suffice for the commission of sin. One must repent of sin. One must articulate that I did do this. I did this because I was ignorant. I did this because I didn't have all the information. I accept that I never sought the information in prayer. God, I used to be a person that never thought that I needed to involve you in my political choices. Why did I think that I could keep an aspect, such an important aspect as to what my values are? Why did I think that I could keep them separate from a true matching walk with you? A lot of people, what they support politically is completely at odds with what the Bible says. The Bible is talking about compassion. The Bible is talking about loving the stranger. The Bible is talking about loving the alien. Many people in America are failing dismally on all these counts. And that is why when they flee to other lands in the future, when this land becomes overrun with the manifestation of the just rewards for all the sin that is here, when war breaks out here, when nuclear weapons are tested here inside the country and attack this country, when enemies come against America and attack her, her people will scatter. Her people will flee. And then when they go to other borders and they seek entry, they're going to meet the same harsh response, because now the whole world would have been watching us live on TV, what we're doing to Hispanics, what will eventually start happening to Black people. The whole world is watching, and so the world will not have empathy, and the world will say you are a savage people. I did say that I saw in my old visions, I did see that full planes were turned around at certain destinations and told to come right back here. Not a single person was allowed to disembark. When they found out that it was an American plane coming, distress or no distress, they sent it back. I saw people also in some situations, they let them disembark, but then they sat in the airport. And most airports, they don't have enough seats and everything. So when you get 3 planes coming from America, a lot of people were sitting on the floor and everybody was so still. I didn't see them giving food or anything like that. People were just sitting on the floor still, basically afraid, waiting to find out their fate. Would this country that they fled to for refuge let them in? But America's spoiling her name internationally everywhere. And so it will be what it will be. And so we talk about this man, Rahm Emanuel, that God says he knows where the bodies are buried, and he knows where the secrets are, and he knows what the truth is. The Lord says he knows. He was close enough to see and hear, and what he knows will prove problematic for him in the days ahead. And God told me basically that Rahm Emanuel is the key to Barack Obama. This is very intense information, that Rahm Emanuel is the key to Barack Obama. This means that basically Mr. Emanuel, God is saying, is a repository of facts. That if you were to sit this man down and maybe do a tell-all interview with him, or maybe give him a bit of truth serum, because he looks like a man who can keep his speech. And the impression that God was putting on my heart basically is that Mr. Emanuel distanced himself. And I didn't know that about him until I did research the following day, because I wasn't going to look up anyone at 5 o'clock in the morning. So the feeling I was having is that this man, for the sake of wisdom, distanced himself. But then imagine how shocked I was to find the next day when I looked into it, right, that the man distanced himself so much that he basically ended up on the other side of the world. He ended up in not as far away as Chicago. He ended up all the way in Japan. But God says that Rahm Emanuel is the key to Barack Obama. And once they know that, they will kill him. And then I asked the Lord, they will try to kill him. And the Lord said, they will kill him. He will die despite distancing himself from the center of what he knew. And that is what put me in mind of the prophecy, Ready Player One. Because nobody that knows the origin of the man who will eventually be the beast of Revelation 13 is going to be tolerated to breathe. I told you that every single political figurehead that you can think of, any big name, anybody, think of the Clintons, think of the remaining Bushes, whoever it is, anybody that has rubbed shoulders with this man and been in cahoots, in the dirt, in the dungeon, in the basements with the babies, with him, none of them are going to be left to tell the tale at the final analysis of it all. And then another person that God mentioned was Rand Paul. Rand Paul. And it was just one sentence. Again, another person that no one is thinking about now. I don't know what. No one is, at least myself. I do not make it my business to stay tuned into what people are doing in DC. Because for me, I have said that it is theater to keep the nation occupied while the main thing, like looting the country and preparing to sell it downriver, is taking place. So Rand Paul is a Republican. This is what is written about him on the internet. You put in Rand Paul, Democrat or Republican, He's a Republican. And the only thing God said about him is Rand Paul was one of the first. Either Rand Paul was the first to do this, or Rand Paul was one of the first to do this. And so that is as cryptic as you want to get. And sometimes this is all the Lord will give me by way of a message. Rand Paul was the first to do this, or Rand Paul was one of the first to do this. And so obviously off to Google I went. After I got basic understanding of who Mr. Emanuel was, I simply said, Google, what was Rand Paul the first to do? And I think either I said, what was Rand Paul the first to do? Or yes, that's what I asked, because I had no idea what he had to do with. And Google brought me back a result that the very first thing that the AI says is that Mr. Rand Paul, was one of the first people to call for the release of the Epstein files. And he was doing it way back in the first presidency. That is what comes up about him in the little AI synopsis, that Rand Paul was one of the first people to call for the release of the Epstein files, that he in fact broke away from the voting bloc of his party several times, saying that these files need to come out for the sake of transparency. These files need to come out for the sake of accountability before the American people, that the government shouldn't just be covering up grievous harm and wicked people just to protect a few names. So I was surprised to see that he had voted with the Democrats several times to try and get these files brought out, and nothing happened. So that is basically it on him. Yah didn't give me anything else. The next thing that the Lord gave me, what is the date today? Just a moment, please. The next thing that the Lord gave me on November the 20th, this will be early hours, is that there will be an exit from power. He said that people will be fired in the coming months. And I see a rotational change of power surrounding the White House as the inner circle sees a need to purge itself of what it sees as leaks and liabilities. So you might be wondering where Mr. Tom Homan is. I'm sure you remembered him. The man who came galloping out of the gate, barking, promising everyone that no matter what hole they were hiding in, he was going to find them, drag them back across the border, kick them into their own country, come hell or high water. Lots of talk. God is mighty. God has a way of pulling the clothes, the very clothing off a man, and shaming him so greatly that his own party will put him out to pasture. Nobody knows where this man is. He hasn't been seen since June or July, and that's because it was exposed that he actually took a big bribe just towards the end of the Biden presidency. He took a big bribe from undercover FBI, and he made them promises that once they were in, right? Guaranteed promises, as if he knew that once the Republicans were in power, he said that because the FBI agents came posing as people who own private jails, just to let you know why ICE is so aggressive on picking people up. Foolish people in this country actually think that the homeland and the borders are being secured. No, there's a vigilante bounty hunter thing going on. There's money on the head of every warm body that these ICE agents catch. Every single person that they bring in, every head count brings money. This is catch for cash. And so he promised them that if they owned a jail, that he would soon have it filled, because they're going to be rounding up all the bad hombres, right? The bad guys in America. And so he took this money in a fast food bag and thought nothing of it. And now the story broke. Part of the reason, in case you were wondering why the president hates ABC so much, is because ABC broke that story and kept hammering on it. Excuse me, please. And so all of a sudden, a man that was talking more than Kristi Noem, he was talking more than her, he was doing more press than her at the beginning of this administration. All of a sudden, you can't see him anywhere. And I exactly know where he's gone. He's gone where all guilty, slightly wealthy, government-affiliated white people go. Black people will be visibly fired. They will be visibly shamed. A Colin Powell can be in power forever and then will leave under a cloud of suspicion or somehow, just abruptly. Beginning of this administration, they literally purged the top brass of all the high-ranking black generals. But a man like this, with his hand caught in the cookie jar, they don't fire them. They do exactly what they do with bad cops. They put them out of sight of the people. Because when the people surround the station and say, bring us out this person, bring us out this offender, then they say, oh no, he was fired. He's not been fired. He has his full pension. He's on administrative leave. He's probably in the station working in the back office where nobody ever goes. And all the other guys are laughing at him and telling him, oh, you're going to have to lay low for 6 months. And then you'll probably get transferred somewhere else. But he doesn't skip a beat. Because America is what it is. So that man hasn't been seen. But there has been no formal announcement that he's fired. But now Yah says that just like something clicking its way into a tighter formation, Trump administration is going to start purging people that it sees as liabilities, people that it sees as leaks. And so we're going to see people getting fired in the coming months. And that's why this tiny little piece is called an exit from power. The inner circle, I see a rotational change of power coming because the White House will see a need to purge itself of leaks and liabilities in the inner circle. There will be people leaving the White House in large numbers as this administration takes a shakier footing in its second year. Things are about to get rocky as White House policy diverges widely from everything that American presidents routinely want to be represented by and associated with. What they will do and decide will not match with the general appearance of America as a land of freedom and liberty. Soon, there will be crackdowns even on freedom of expression in all its forms, and on social media, these changes will be visibly enforced in ways that people didn't think was possible. When I wrote this piece, I thought about everything that's been happening in the UK, and it's frightening to think about because what has been happening in the United Kingdom currently doesn't make sense. The United Kingdom police can come to your house for a social media post and arrest you. I'm talking about an actual arrest featuring actual handcuffs and you being forced to leave your house in the middle of the night because they have identified your Facebook posts, come to the house and said that you are seditious, treasonous, and a threat to national security. I've seen several men arrested for this, and all the time the men were shocked and they kept saying, are you serious right now? Of course, they use different language. Are you serious right now? And these officers are standing there and they're saying, yes, yes. Are you so-and-so, and is this your Facebook page, and this is the post? So the British police are not solving crime. They're hanging out on Facebook, assessing the violence of words that people who are rightly angered by all the nonsense they see going on, taking place, funded by their tax dollars. This is what they're tracking down and taking people into police custody for. And so the first thing God talks about is people getting fired as we go into 2026 and all that. People leaving the White House in droves and large numbers as the administration steadies itself for a shaky start to the second year. And a lot of that shakiness is because the government has fallen so far out of favor that it's not even favored by the base that voted for it. So all the people who are upset with the sour grapes that they got for voting MAGA, this is people who are centrist but right. This is people who are right. This is people who are far right and all that. A lot of people, all but the die-hard core of MAGA, right, are starting to regret their decision. They're starting to become highly critical of the government. The government and the president in particular is at his lowest popularity rankings ever. And I will not stop reminding people that God's prophecy was that this man would be the most hated president ever, that he would go down in infamy, which is just basically loud cries of shame. We hate you, shame. And so the Lord says that the administration is off to a rocky start in the second year. So we're talking 2026. He says things are about to get rocky because the White House is going to diverge so greatly from everything that any American president wants to be known for. American presidents love to be known for something. Each one of them has a signature thing that they do Obama definitely with him, it was the gay marriage thing. George Bush, it's the Twin Towers. Bill Clinton, unfortunately, you can't remember anything about him except Monica Lewinsky. That's how he went out. And so it's always something that will remind you of them, forever. And so presidents want to be remembered for something. Presidents want to be aligned with certain policies, and they tend to all uniformly shy away from certain things. So an American president, for instance, never wants to be seen as a dictator. An American president never wants to be seen as repressive. An American president never wants to be told by the people of America, hey, that famous expression, don't tread on me. American president never wants to hear that, but God says that this White House doesn't mind, that this White House is going to pull away from all the traditional values that make America, America, to the point that White House policy and the general appearance of the White House will not match what people associate America with at all. And the specific phrase that Yah mentions is seeing America as a land of freedom and liberty. So that means that if the White House pulls away from everything that America is generally known for, like freedom and liberty, then obviously we're going to distinctly lack freedom and distinctly lack liberty. That's literally what he's saying. That we're going to go even further into repression than we had before. And they're going to start, one hallmark of that will be that they will start to crack down on freedom of expression in all its forms. What are the forms that I can throw out? This is print media. This is your actual written newspapers that you pick up at the stand. This is newsletters, whether it's written newsletters or it's newsletters online. It's all forms of online media. This is social media. This is, what else do we have online? This is perhaps political emails that you might want to subscribe to. This is even going as far as plays, movies. You won't be able to do political satire anymore. You might have to only have pro-revolutionary stuff like Hamilton, and anything else that is tongue-in-cheek, anything else that is satirical will have to be removed. That's just general, basically policing the internet, blocking off certain sites. Blocking off information, you can't go to this part of the web, you can't go to that part of the web. You put in certain things even now and nothing comes up. You put in certain questions into Google and literally nothing will come up. It will bring you that 1, 2, 3, 4 thing and then say, there are not many results for your search. So these things. Social media and freedom of expression, there will be crackdowns on it, and these changes will be visibly enforced in ways that people didn't think was possible. I just wonder what those ways might be. The next part is called a leash on free speech. People will be arrested for what they say. It will take more than an apology on Twitter to get you off in the new America. Instead, you will have a case in federal court, and the grounds to be able to avoid conviction are slim because the realm of charges will be broader. It is a closed mouth policy that the government is pursuing, where opening your mouth will make you liable to lawsuits and charges, just as if you had committed a physical crime. You will see the think tanks and the influencers forced to retract their statements on what everybody knows is a podcast or an unsponsored program, proving that the government has overreach into thoughts and opinions and has found a way to make you pay criminally for them. Free speech will go away in America, and you will see the noose tightening on freedom of expression and other constitutional rights. So this is basically just right on time to the little piece that was there, that there will be visible enforcement in ways that we never thought of to police social media. I personally am not able to tell you any way that I can think of policing social media, except maybe banning comments, easily banning people, banning channels. They've already started doing that. They're purging channels off YouTube for just saying one or two things and claiming that people are breaking the terms and conditions. But some people have gotten down to the end of it and already found that it's because they're premiering AI, that they want to be sharper, but the AI is dumber than the last kind they were using. And so it's just deleting people off the internet and saying that, oh, they're saying inflammatory stuff or they're bots and they're actually real people. So that is happening. But God is talking about going one step further and basically holding people criminally liable for their thoughts. If you've read the book 1984, then you know about thought crime. Thought crime wasn't just you sit and think something that was out of sync with what Big Brother said. You would actually pay for thought crime, and usually you got disappeared. People never came back when they arrested them. They probably were taking them to the lime pits. This is very serious. It doesn't matter how often you hear it. You need to be able to sit and absorb into yourself routinely the reality that you are living in a place that you have always feared, a place that is en route into the transformation into, I guess, the seriously communist years of China or North Korea. It needs to hit home. It needs to hit home so that the false hope can go away. Because as long as you hold on to that false hope, you will not think rightly, and you will not be able to make right decisions, short-term decisions and long-term decisions. So they're going to actively find a way to cause people to pay for what they say. And traditionally, the reason that God says it will take more than an apology on Twitter to get you off is because if you say something that's deemed anti-Semitic here or inflammatory speech here, normally you get canceled by the person and their supporters, and then generally get hung out to dry in the public space a little bit. Everybody condemns you, and then you usually pop up 5 days after you can't stand it anymore, and you will say, oh, I'm so sorry, and you will put the apology on Twitter, put the apology on TikTok, and then everybody assesses the apology. Did you look sorry enough? Did you roll your eyes? Were you being sarcastic? That type of thing. And if it hits all the metrics, then generally over time you can build and repair yourself. But Yah says it's going to take more than that, because the cops are going to come for you. And when you find yourself in the courtroom, he says it'll be harder to avoid conviction of whatever you're charged with. Because instead of the charges being concise and saying on this day, you said that, and according to penal code, this, that, you're guilty of this and that. It's not going to be like that. He said the charges will be so broad. The broader you make the charges, the easier it is to convict, because the person isn't really fighting the charge from one area head on. They're trying to anticipate a whole range of case law that can be manipulated against them in order to secure a conviction. And so God is basically saying that they don't really care how they get you. They're just going to charge you with enough things to make sure that somewhere along the line they get you. And they're doing that so that the people who are gotten will serve as an example to the next people that you're not to talk. I saw a news report about China, that China is doing its hardest crackdown against Christians yet, and requiring people, and I saw another African country, a person wrote this in the comments, they're requiring people talking about spiritual topics here like myself to actually hold a bachelor or a master's of divinity. You have to have, China is saying, you have to have educational qualifications in God, such as going to Bible school, before you can sit here and be able to say, for instance, the things that I'm saying that the Lord has shown me. And so that is very, very concerning indeed, because what this means is that we are going into Revelation 13 at a faster rate than anyone would have imagined. Opening your mouth when the government is pursuing a closed mouth policy will definitely get you liable to lawsuits and charges as if it was a physical crime that you committed, as if it was a murder, a robbery, a burglary, assault with a deadly weapon. You will go to court for a Facebook post. You will go to court for a meme. They arrested a man for a meme recently. I just can't remember what the meme was. The meme was that he tweeted a list of the president's convictions, which is a real life thing. The president does have convictions. And then all this man did was put it together in one little picture and put that on his TikTok. And this man actually went to jail for that this year. So God says that think tanks and influencers, so it's all these podcasts, the bigger podcasts, definitely the ones that don't exactly, they're not exactly syndicated, they're not exactly national, but then people watch them from all over, right? You have a YouTube channel, maybe you used to be a news reporter, something happened, they drove you off, like Megyn Kelly, like Tucker Carlson, and now you still have a very big fan base But these guys are running their own shows so that they can be free to say what they want to say without sponsored money. But then God is still saying that it doesn't matter. Even though everybody knows it's a well-known podcast, you don't have sponsors, so you're free to say what you want to say. He says that people are going to be forced to retract their statements, and that the government will start to overreach into the thoughts and opinions of the American people and find ways to levy criminal charges and get criminal convictions on them. Free speech will go away in America, and you will see the noose tighten on freedom of expression and other constitutional rights. So there you go. I had a dream. It was a very short dream, and I think I had this dream on the 18th or the 19th of January. And the dream is a short dream, and it was so violent that I was basically shaking myself. I was shaking myself to come out of that dream because no. And all I saw was people went for their naturalization ceremony. You know, when you become a U.S. citizen, when you go and you guys do the pledge and they give you all the different motivational speeches and tell you you're an American now, this is your civic rights, your civic duties. There's usually a host of speeches, and they give you the welcome kit that has the flag because everybody takes a picture at the end. And all of that, you get your papers for Social Security, your application for the passport, all of that. There's certain things that it's best that you handle there before you leave the building. But I saw that on Naturalization Day, which is supposed to be the happiest day of a new U.S. citizen's life, I saw that in several cities, angry mobs gathered at the courthouse, and they laid hands physically, I'm talking about, on the new citizens of the United States of America. This is a time to come. This is not something that's happening now. Anti-immigrant sentiment in America had reached such outraged and tumultuous levels that mobs were forming and going to the courthouses or going to whatever buildings these ceremonies were happening in and waiting for the people outside. And I saw that they laid hold on the people, and I'm telling you, Americans tore these people's clothes off them. They manhandled them, they beat them up, they roughed them up to the fact that I literally saw one man, almost all of his suit was torn off him. This was a kind of wild animal activity that I always tell people when I'm in these kinds of dreams. And God puts me either to stand on the side watching, but it's so close for comfort that you just think someone will come and lay hands on you too. Or he puts you in the midst of the people jostling so you can actually see the way people's eyes change when hatred is at work in them. This is how you know that this is the work of demons. People's eyes change when they're filled with hatred. People's countenances, I'm telling you, there is an other present when people are moving with xenophobia and racism. There's absolutely no way that you will tell me this is independent human sentiment. The choice to be elitist, the choice to be separatist, the choice to look down on others, the choice to esteem others lower than yourselves. Yes, those are the door openers to that sin. But once those doors are opened and racism begins to work in a person, I'm telling you that racism comes in and it's working with spirits. To be around those people, I'm telling you, I shook myself until I jumped out of sleep and I was like, oh, because wow, those people. You don't want to be in the midst of a mob like that. I'm telling you, Americans are capable of killing people just like anybody else anywhere in the world. The difference is that here people just don't see it. The civilization, I told you, is just layers of whitewash on the wall. You get a wire brush and you scrub it with enough pressure. You scrub it with enough. There's not enough. The cartels are overrunning the country. Haven't seen a cartel member a day in your withered life, but will sit in that rocking chair and sit in front of Fox and tell you and be like, I tell you, we're in danger. We're in danger. These old people, a lot of these old Fox News people are absolute poisonous wells. It just needs to be said. Because I encountered one on TikTok just less than 24 hours ago. Decrepit mass of a man. So the mobs, I saw, God was showing me that they're going to be laying hands even on people for the naturalization ceremony. And I really saw this moment was ruined for the people. I saw that it was so ruined, and they were just in shock. And the mob got a lot of them because, a lot of them had come out. Sometimes people come and they stand in front of the courthouse steps to take pictures and everything like that. So that's how the mob got them. They just rushed these people, but it wasn't only in one place. It didn't happen only in one place. And it was such a pity. And then late on December 20th, it's December 20th. Today is November 21st. It's now November 21st in the morning, but this is yesterday when it was still November 20th. The Lord said to me, the time of the sigil is here. So this is the last part of the prophecy. The time of the sigil is here. He said that, and because I was busy with the other parts, I was busy reading up on what is this about Rahm Emanuel. How does he interact with the president? What was their relationship? And CNN is just basically giving up all the goods and everything. I put that down. Just a moment, please. I'm writing down different aspects, and then the Lord says the time of the sigil is here. And I'm thinking, I know the word. The meaning is not with me at the moment. I know the word. The meaning is not with me at the moment. When I'm done with everything, I'll look it up. So I continue writing. And then he says, the time of the sigil is here. It is time for the signs to go up all over America. They will start to put up the signs soon. You know the ones. Keep out. No admittance. And of course, the old favorite. This is just how he said it. God was talking to me as conversationally as you just sit with two friends and you discuss a topic, each person weighing in, except that I wasn't saying a lot because I was listening. And he said, of course, the old favorite, private property. Says, how right now in America, all restaurants and businesses are private property, but nobody ever insists on that, right? Because they want to do business. And so their doors are open to all customers. So you don't see any signs that tell people not to come in, not to park in the business's parking space, because they want to trade with all people and make money, right? He said, well, they won't do that anymore. Restaurants will say they're a certain type of restaurant. They have a certain clientele. And so regretfully, and then in caps, he said, we reserve the right to refuse service. And at the very moment he said that, as I heard the words, I saw this big sign go up on the wall of this very popular food chain that I personally have never been to. Cracker Barrel. We reserve the right to serve and seat customers according to our rights as a privately owned business. I also saw it on a bank, Wells Fargo Bank. I said, Lord, what? The bank? He said, yes, the bank. They'll do that. And many, just like that bank, who like money, but want to honor protocol more, which means they like money, but they want to keep in step with the government and fall in line with what the government is doing more than they want to like money. He said many who are like that bank, who will regard protocol over money making, they'll do that. They will fall in line with the government and they will close their doors to minorities who will have to find different ways to make money, to do banking, and a host of other things. So before I go back over this, let me just let you know, a sigil basically is a sign, a trademark, or a marker, okay? It's a particular symbol meaning certain things to all people, something that means certain things to all people, or it means certain things to certain people. And once it's seen and it's popularized into use, the meaning becomes known to all. That's what makes sigils so popular. If it's an inside symbol where it's only like a secret coded handshake between you, your brother, and your sister, and then you grow up and you move away and you don't see each other for a couple of years and you meet again and you do it and everybody's watching you, that's not a sigil because the three of you knows what it means, but it doesn't carry any relevance for anyone else. For a sigil to be popular, for a sigil, not exactly popular as in popular positive, just for it to be accepted widely as a sigil, It has to be a certain thing that carries a universal meaning. Everybody has to know what it means. Or it has to be a certain thing that carries a meaning for a large enough group of people for it to become a known thing associated with them. So he says that if a sigil is known enough and powerful enough, it can actually carry its own identity independent of anyone who's wearing it or affiliated with it. And the first thing that I thought about was, think of the U.S. flag. Think of the U.S. flag. You can see the U.S. flag. The U.S. flag has its own personality apart from the nation. Anywhere you see it flying, it's almost as if the entire country is up there flying with it because it's such a powerful symbol. Likewise, the Nazi swastika has a universal application. Everybody learned in school, or next to everybody learned who the Nazis were, what the swastika represented. It basically, when you see it, it evokes such a powerful response because the entirety of your home training, the entirety of your educational training or your personal experiences, if you lived through it, it's all evoked just by looking at one symbol. And wouldn't you find it interesting today, when I say today, I mean yesterday, November 20th, that on the very same day, the very same Thursday that the United States Trump administration basically gutted the Ministry of Education and basically clawed out so many degrees, right? So many important educational qualifications. Wouldn't you find it interesting that one small part, I think it was the Coast Guard, no longer see the noose that goes around the neck to lynch people. The noose and the swastika have been declassified by the Coast Guard, and they are no longer hate symbols in America. They're now just seen as potentially divisive signs. So the noose that triggers about 50 million people in this country, right, is no longer seen automatically as a hate symbol. Now you can see a noose and say, yeah, but you got to wonder, what does the guy mean by that? He just showed you a noose. Did you ask him what he wanted to do with it? That's what you're going to be told now. And if you gained anything from what I said in the earlier part of this prophecy, then you will understand that these things go gradually. The government cannot come out and say that the swastika is now officially declassified. No, they will always begin in one non-obtrusive part, like the Coast Guard. Notice how it wasn't the Army that did this. Notice how it wasn't the Air Force. Notice how it wasn't the Navy. Notice how it wasn't any of the big three that came out and did this. Because why? Because those guys have millions of people and it would ricochet around the country pretty fast. Because the Army is as blended up as you want. Same with the Air Force, same with the Navy. The Coast Guard, I don't know, not so much. They don't have extensive staff and things like that. So just imagine one of the unobtrusive groups comes out and say swastika that right now, as I'm saying it, someone in Poland is triggered so bad if they're on this channel. Someone from Hungary, someone from France, someone from Austria, someone from Germany themselves. Americans themselves hearing this are triggered so bad. And you hear that the Coast Guard of the United States have now said that these things cannot automatically be interpreted as hate. And why are they saying this? Because white people are getting ready to start flying this stuff in their yard. They're getting ready to start putting it on the front porch. You know those little things that they whirl in the wind? It'd be very interesting to see little whirling swastikas with the 4 little legs whirling. As soon as there's a wind, then they whirl, and then you just stick them along with the Confederate flag. Flag's next. Flag is already starting to go up. It's banned. It's a banned symbol in America, but it's never been taken down in some parts of the United States. It's been 48 hours since I spoke to you, United States. 48 hours since I spoke to you by the word of the Lord and said that signs are about to go up in this country that will drive you away from everywhere. Drive you away, tell you to use the back entrance, tell you to use the back entrance, tell you there's no work available. Tell you no blacks allowed, no Mexicans, no dogs. To be numbered with dogs. Less than 48 hours. We reserve the right to refuse service. We have a certain type of clientele. We're a certain type of restaurant. Have you ever experienced it? I know that people who have experienced it. There's people living right now in the United States. There's people living right now in certain parts of Africa. South Africa comes to mind. Zimbabwe is another one, I'm sure. Anywhere that basically had the colonial mandate. You ever walk into a place and then be told, can you please go out and come back in with through the service entrance? To be told, oh no, we don't serve your kind here. To be told, oh no, you can only come to the movies. I saw a clip like that from some movies. A Mexican guy invited a girl that he liked. It's a black and white movie, so it's quite some time ago. He invited a girl that he liked on a date, and when they came, he said, I'd like 2 tickets, please. You know how they spoke back then? And the guy goes, you didn't read the sign. And he looks up and it says, Mexicans on Thursdays only. And he'd come on another day. So they sent him away, and he was very ashamed in front of the girl. And you know how it is with men. When they're ashamed, they're angry. And she kept rubbing his arm and saying, that's okay. We can come back tomorrow. And he said, I never spend my money here, because he was so ashamed, so embarrassed at being made small, at being treated as less than human and less than a man in front of a woman he likes. Can you imagine showing up looking all nice to get your nails done? And the girls are like, we don't have any problem serving you, but can you just do something for me? And you know, you're at the door, you open the door and you're like, are you guys open? And they're like, yes, we absolutely are. And then they say, but can you do something for me? And you're like, sure. And they're like, could you just, do you mind popping out and going around the back? And then you ask why. And then they say, oh, maybe they just mopped the floor. They're just coming up with some lie. You look at the floor, it's as dry as the Sahara Desert. Can you imagine that a simple floor, what's it, 6 to 8 steps to get to the front desk, it becomes the Dubai desert for you. You are not allowed to cross 6 to 8 steps to request service, to ask a question, to fulfill an interview. God says that the people alive will have mental breakdowns, and that is not far-fetched. The people alive cry when their Starbucks order is wrong. It is not hard to imagine, all the way from Gen Z, all the way up to Gen X, sobbing in the minorities as they realize that careers they've devoted their entire lives to are now off the table for them. Jobs are off the table. Travel is off the table. Everything is off the table for second and third class citizens. So I saw this with Cracker Barrel, that they said they're private business and they reserve the right to refuse service. And yet God was saying, you know that right now, every business that you can look at, every business from the bank to the laundromat, all of it is private property. But he said, because the focus point, and well, it should be, of a business is money. The doors are open to everyone. If you want to wash your clothes, as long as you've got the quarters to feed into my machine, come in. You want to enjoy some time at a certain hotel, come in. They want business. But now he says that they will want to fall in line with official government policy, which means that everything the government is doing visibly now that we are already shocked at is about to become that blue house over there. And I've been telling you every single day, I've been coming to this internet since September and telling you, and the Lord says they will also do this, and that will cut away this right and that right, and we will be here, and they will do that, and they will be killing this entire group of people, and to this group of people, you will be steadfastly disenfranchised until you basically have nothing but your skin. And then it is that skin that they will expect you to either hire out for money or maybe be an absolute slave, a 100% slave, not drawing wages, living on their goodwill as before. So imagine that. The time of the Sigil, he said, Then he said, the time of the rose. And I was so confused. I literally did these hands like, Lord, why don't you say the full thing? Why don't you say the full thing so I can know what you mean? Why the cryptic, the sign of the rose? I literally just kind of threw my hands up and I was like, the sign of the rose. Roses, what do roses have to do with anything? And he continued, he said, the sign of the cross. And I said, Lord, the cross too? And he said, look up the use of the cross in Nazi Germany. They used to use it, and the government will use it here too. The government's been using it already. The Klan never left. The Klan is the sheriff. The Klan is the senator. The Klan is the president. Current one that we have, and probably many more that came before him. The Klan never left. The Klan is not a hate organization in the United States. I think they're classified as a religious organization, and they are synonymous with the height of white supremacy that expresses itself in murder. Murder, destruction of property, gaslighting, railroading, false accusation, hanging people, with trial, find you guilty on a stacked jury. What did I say about juries? Kill you, or just kill you anyway. Just hang you anyway to send a message, to the others. And so the Lord said the time of the roses and the time of the cross. And the cross is basically the rise of the Nazi Reich, because they did used to have that iron cross. That iron cross is very synonymous with them. But then the time of the rose, it took more time and just waiting on the Lord. And then it was revealed to me that the time of the rose is talking about the time basically that I think the resistance, is going to rise in America. It's a time of covert plots and operations, a time of mystery and intrigue. Just how a mystery unfolds, who is doing what in the story, and if there is, for instance, a protagonist, a main character, then the Lord was showing me that every time this person arises, right, he will have a signature. He will come, he will do something mysterious in the night, and then people will find his signature on the wall, like Zorro. Everywhere that Zorro went, he left that Z, right? He left that Z, and then people will be, Zorro was here, like that. So God was talking about a time of mystery and intrigue where sometimes like a central character would come and leave a rose as his signature. Also note that there's a bad side to this. Serial killers do this. Serial killers can leave a rose on the body. Serial killers can carve a rose on the body. They can tattoo a rose on the victim before killing. Take her to the basement. Every victim gets one. And then when the body is found later, it's near her ankle. It's on a thigh. It's on a shoulder. And that's how the police know after 2 to 3 bodies, we've got a serial killer. We've got a pattern. So it's a time where God says people will be operating, or we will see the rise of mysterious, unsolvable puzzles following a particular tagline that will rise in popularity. Not popularity like necessarily good popularity, but just rise in knowledge. More and more people will know about it until everybody ends up wondering, who is this doing this, or what is going on? So I guess we should expect mystery plot lines to arise in the midst of all this. Here are the signs that I saw going up across America. These are not the ones from before that was saying no dogs, no Mexicans, no this. These signs are the signs that will precede. These are the appetizer to what Yah says is coming. The signs I saw were keep out, no admittance. Keep out and no admittance, basically the same. Don't come in here. So they put it on the yard. You're allowed to put it on your yard. You don't want strangers in your yard. No admittance, that's different. You can find no admittance on the door of a surgery ward where the surgery is active. Then you get to a certain point and then they will have strictly no admittance when the light is on. That lets you know that this complicated medical procedures going on in here. You can't just come in here. So I saw no admittance, which you usually find in places of business, places of work, or sealed off sections where classified or qualified work is going on. I also saw, just a moment, please. I also saw private property, and I also saw no work here in capital letters. And then in small letters right under that, it said, suitable persons only may inquire inside. Just imagine that. Nobody can work here. And then underneath it's basically saying, but if you're white, come inside and ask for a position. Come inside, because actually we do want help. Help is wanted, but we want to keep the wrong kind of help out. And so you have basically heard everything. This is how the Lord speaks to me at times. Sometimes it's not just direct dictation. Sometimes the Father will give me just enough to let me know these things are coming up. But as I do the due diligence, because he only gives me a sentence or two sometimes, and then I can't come and sit in front of you and said, God said this one sentence and God said this second sentence. That's all I got. So that doesn't show the development of knowledge. If God is telling you a few lines about someone, like saying he knows everything there is, that means, for instance, Mr. Rahm Emanuel knows a person inside and out. And then when he says a person knows where bodies are buried, a person knows where secret lies, a person knows what the truth is, then that means that everything that the public knows is an outright abject lie. And that Mr. Emanuel, if you were to put him against the majority of the American public, Mr. Emanuel knows the real person, and you only know the perception that was carefully curated for you and sold twice successfully. So God says that what this man knows is going to prove problematic for him. And that is because the beast is a single player only. You've been listening to Celestial Revival with the Master's voice. The title of the prophecy is Rahm Emanuel Knows Everything / the time of the Sigil is here. November the 18th, 2025. God bless you. Stay in the Word of God. Spend your time in the Psalms. Become familiar with how to cry out to God for your needs. It is necessary. If you hear that the tap is going to be turned off from the top, then there's no way that you're going to stand underneath a tap that's going to go dry with your cup, doing things like insisting that it must pour water for you. Never ever respond contrary to the information that is in front of you. It shows a lack of intelligence. If you see a pump and you can see the water drying up, you cannot stand there and say, I demand, because it's my civil right. Clearly, your civil right isn't being taken into consideration. And clearly, a smart man seeing water dry up will know that he should get as much as he can from the empty the drying up pump, by placing his cup on a stone or a rock and immediately procuring for himself a second cup and starting to look around for a new source of water. Because who stands there until it goes the last drop and then begins to complain, can you see how I've been cheated at this job? Can you see how I've been unfairly fired? Do you know that every single day you spend doing that, your bills are waiting for you? Do you know that life in these modern societies run on a 30-day cycle? You do know that. Of course you do. Everybody over the age of 12 knows that. But only some people respond responsibly to the harsh changes that life confronts them with. Some people just stand and say, it's not right, it's not right, it's not right. And they forget where life said, of course it's not right, and what are you going to do about it? God is the provider. Hearing these things only tells us one truth. You have to dig deeper to get the water that is available. That's what Jacob had to do. When they ran him off of the water source that he found 3 times, he couldn't sit and say, well, they just keep stealing my wells. No, he had to dig until he finally found one that didn't cause a fuss. Rehoboth. He had to keep going. Otherwise, his entire contingent, and all his animals would have died. That is basically the core of Christianity. With Christ, all things are possible. So God bless you, and until I see you again, goodbye.